Malcolm walked into the emergency shareholders meeting already dressed for the moment he had waited years for. His father was finally stepping down, and everyone expected Whitmore Holdings to pass into the hands of his only son. Even Malcolm had prepared his acceptance speech. But when Richard took the microphone, he looked past him. "The person I have chosen to succeed me is Alicia, his own wife." The room erupted in applause. Malcolm remained standing in the aisle, his speech crushed in his fist, while his pregnant wife stared at the stage in shock. Evelyn jumped to her feet. "She's an outsider. She came into this family with nothing. How can you give everything to her instead of your own son?" But Richard didn't change his mind, because she has spent 10 years protecting what you two would destroy. In front of shareholders, executives, and reporters, Malcolm had just watched his father choose his wife over him. And as everyone applauded Alicia, something inside him snapped. He tore his prepared speech in half and walked out of the room. But losing the position he believed was his birthright wasn't what truly destroyed him. It was knowing that the woman he had spent years looking down on was now standing above him. And from that day forward, Malcolm no longer wanted his father's approval. He wanted Alicia out of the way. What she didn't know was how far her own husband was willing to go to take back everything he believed belonged to him. "Evelyn, why don't you let me order a few extra dishes from a restaurant, just to be safe? I'm afraid I won't be able to prepare everything myself for all your guests." "Shut your mouth." Evelyn came toward her. Heat spread across Alicia's left cheek, and her ear rang. "Order from a restaurant? Are you trying to embarrass me? You want my friends saying the Whitmore family has a daughter-in-law who can't even prepare a luncheon? Let me tell you something. You should be grateful you were ever allowed into this family. A foster girl with no parents. If Richard hadn't taken pity on you, who knows where you'd be now? Do you understand?" Alicia lowered her head. Her cut hand closed into a fist. She had heard those words for 10 years. She should have been used to them by now. But every time Evelyn reminded her that she had grown up without parents, the same place inside her still hurt. "I understand." Evelyn turned toward the door. "Have everything ready before 11, and Malcolm gets back this afternoon. Go pick up your husband at the airport. Bring him straight home afterward and finish cleaning up." Her footsteps faded down the hall. Alicia stayed in the kitchen for a few seconds, then turned on the faucet and rinsed the cut in her palm. A thin line of blood washed toward the drain. She turned back to the stove and checked the pot of soup. By noon, Evelyn's friends filled the dining room, talking and laughing over the food Alicia had spent the morning preparing. They praised Evelyn for having such a wonderful home and such a good meal. Evelyn accepted every compliment as if the work had been hers. Alicia ate in the kitchen after everyone else had been served, with a bandage still wrapped around her hand. After cleaning up, Alicia warmed a glass of milk, sliced an apple, and carried both upstairs. The room at the end of the hall belonged to Richard, her father-in-law and the founder of Whitmore Holdings. 2 years earlier, Richard had suffered a stroke. The left side of his body remained weak, and his hearing had worsened. Since then, he had stepped away from most daily operations, though he still held the title of chairman and controlled the family's largest voting stake. "Richard, I'm coming in." Richard sat in an armchair beside the window. He turned when he heard her and smiled. "Alicia, come in." She set the milk and apple on the table and sat beside him. As she always did, she checked the hearing device he wore. "The battery's running low. That explains why you kept asking me to repeat myself this morning. I'll replace it." The device had been custom ordered and was small enough to be almost invisible once worn. Richard protected it more than anything else he owned. He took it everywhere and kept it beside him even when he slept. Once, Evelyn had suggested throwing it away and buying a newer one. Richard refused. Alicia replaced the battery and put the device back in place. She tapped it twice. "Can you hear me now?" "I can hear you. I can hear you." Richard smiled. "My ears are in that thing now. Lose it, and I won't hear a word you say." His eyes dropped to the bandage on Alicia's hand. The smile left his face. "What happened to your hand?" "I slipped while cutting vegetables. It's just a small cut." Richard watched her, then took her injured hand in his. He opened the drawer beside him, pulled out an envelope, and placed it in her hand. "It's your birthday today. I can't exactly go shopping like this, so take this and buy yourself something. And don't use it for Maya's school expenses or my medication. I know you." Alicia's throat tightened. In this entire house, Someone had remembered what day it was. Thank you. I should be thanking you. Richard looked toward the window. This family has stayed together because of you. So has the company. I know what you've done these past 10 years. I may be stuck in this room, but I'm not confused. You've put up with too much, Alicia. Don't keep doing it forever. He paused. There are things I'm arranging. Just give me some time. Alicia didn't understand what he meant. She thought he was speaking out of concern for her. Don't worry about me. The doctor told you not to stress yourself. I'm fine. I can handle things. After leaving Richard's room, Alicia went to Maya's bedroom. 7-year-old Maya was lying on the floor with crayons scattered around her. When she saw her mother, she jumped up and hid a sheet of paper behind her back. Mom, close your eyes. No peeking. Alicia smiled and closed them. A sheet of paper was placed in her hands. Okay, open them. Happy birthday, Mom. It was a crayon drawing. A red-roofed house stood beneath a yellow sun. 3 people held hands in front of it. A woman with long hair, a little girl, and an older man with a cane. That's you. That's me. And that's Grandpa. My teacher told us to draw our family, so I drew ours. Alicia studied the picture. It's beautiful. But where's Dad? Why didn't you draw him? Maya looked down. I was going to, but I don't remember what Dad looks like when he smiles. He always looks mad at me. The other day, he called me stupid because I read a word wrong. She looked up at her mother. Mom, am I really stupid? Is that why Dad doesn't like me? No. The answer came out stronger than Alicia intended. She dropped to her knees and pulled Maya into her arms. You are not stupid. You're smart. Your dad gets frustrated because he's busy and tired. Don't think that about yourself, okay? Maya pressed her face against her mother's shoulder. Over her daughter's head, Alicia looked at the drawing on the floor. The red-roofed house, the yellow sun, and the empty space where one more person should have been. That afternoon, Alicia folded Maya's drawing and slipped it into the inside pocket of her purse before driving to Philadelphia International Airport to pick up her husband. Malcolm's flight from Singapore landed 40 minutes late. Alicia waited in the arrivals area with a bottle of water in her hand, watching passengers come through the doors. Malcolm appeared in the crowd, pulling his suitcase behind him. At 35, he was handsome, well-dressed, and carried himself with the confidence of the only son of a wealthy business family. That confidence disappeared when he saw his wife. Why are you here? Evelyn told me to pick you up. Was the flight tiring? I brought you some water. Forget it. Malcolm pushed the bottle away. Next time, don't come pick me up. If one of my business partners sees this, they'll think I can't afford a driver. Alicia lowered her hand. She had heard him speak to her this way so many times that the words no longer hurt the way they once had. What remained was a dull emptiness. Then a group of people came through the VIP exit. A young woman in oversized sunglasses walked in front, followed by several assistants carrying luggage. Beside her was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair. Malcolm stopped. Then he left Alicia behind and went straight toward them with the biggest smile she had seen on his face all day. Camille? I'm Malcolm, vice chairman of Whitmore Holdings. We were both at the business forum recently. I was sitting a couple of rows behind you. I didn't expect to run into you here. Camille lowered her sunglasses enough to look at him. Malcolm? Sorry, I don't remember you. She kept walking and turned to the man beside her. Victor, is the car here yet? My feet are killing me. It's here, let's go. Victor gave Malcolm a brief nod before following Camille toward the exit. Malcolm was left standing in the terminal, with the smile still on his face. A couple of airport employees nearby covered their mouths as they laughed. Malcolm's face changed. He turned, grabbed his suitcase, and headed for the parking garage. Alicia followed him without a word. The moment they got into the car and the doors closed, Malcolm turned on her. Look at yourself, your clothes, your hair. You're the wife of a vice chairman, and you show up looking like this? No wonder people don't respect me. Standing next to you makes me look ridiculous. Alicia kept her eyes ahead, both hands on the steering wheel. Malcolm, she didn't remember you. What does that have to do with what I'm wearing? I got up at 4 this morning to prepare lunch for Evelyn's guests. I didn't have time to change. I'm sorry. And now you're arguing with me? You always have an excuse. Cooking for my mother, taking care of my father, driving Maya around. You act like someone forced you to do all of it. You choose to make yourself miserable, so don't blame me. He kept talking, using Alicia to unload the humiliation he had just swallowed inside the terminal. Alicia stopped answering. She drove out of the parking garage and merged onto the highway, looking at the road ahead. As Malcolm kept criticizing her, Alicia's mind drifted back 20 years. Back then, Alicia was an orphan, growing up at a small, church-supported children's home in Germantown. She had never known her parents. She had been left outside a church as a newborn, wrapped in an old blanket with only a note listing her birth date and her name. At 12, she received a scholarship from the Whitmore Foundation. Richard came to present the awards himself. When Alicia was called up as the top student, she stood on the stage holding her certificate while tears filled her eyes. She wasn't crying because she had won. Everyone below was applauding, but there wasn't a single member of her family in the room to see it. While she wiped her face, a boy her age climbed onto the stage and held out a white handkerchief with a blue meters stitched into one corner. "Here. Girls look terrible when they cry. Wipe your face." Then he ran back to his seat, where Richard tapped him on the head for climbing onto the stage without permission. That boy was Malcolm. To him, the handkerchief meant almost nothing. He forgot about it soon afterward. But Alicia had never been given much of anything that belonged only to her. She washed the handkerchief, folded it, kept it under her pillow, and carried it with her for years. Alicia studied hard, worked while attending college, graduated at the top of her business program, and applied to Whitmore Holdings. She rose through the company on her own ability. Projects that were close to failing recovered under her management, and Richard came to trust her more with each year. One day, he called her into his office and said something she had never expected. "Alicia, would you consider becoming part of this family? Malcolm is impulsive. He likes having fun more than responsibility. I know my son. He won't be able to protect this company by himself. But if you're beside him, I'll know the family and the business are in good hands." That night, Alicia sat alone in her apartment and took the old handkerchief from a drawer. People could say she married Malcolm because she owed Richard a debt, or because she wanted the Whitmore money. Only Alicia knew the truth. She agreed because she had spent years loving the boy who once climbed onto a stage and handed a lonely girl a white handkerchief. Malcolm agreed to the marriage for a different reason. Before the wedding, he told his friends that marrying Alicia would prove to Richard that he was finally ready to take over the company. He expected the chairman's seat to follow. 1 year passed, then 3, then 5. Richard stayed in control, while more responsibility moved into Alicia's hands. By the 7th year, Alicia had become one of the company's top executives, while Malcolm still held a title that carried far less real authority than he wanted. That was when his resentment toward his wife hardened into something deeper. When Malcolm made a bad decision, Alicia fixed it. When important partners came to Whitmore Holdings, they asked for Alicia. And whenever Richard criticized Malcolm, he pointed to Alicia as the example his son should follow. For 10 years, Alicia kept the household running, helped manage the company, raised Maya, and cared for Richard after his stroke. She kept telling herself that if she tried a little longer and endured a little more, Malcolm might remember the person he had once been, and their family might finally become what she had always wanted it to be. That night, after a dinner where no one mentioned Alicia's birthday, she went upstairs to check Richard's blood pressure, then returned to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for the next morning. Malcolm went straight to his office, shut the door, opened a bottle of liquor, and sat with the humiliation from the airport still on his mind. After 10, his phone rang. It was Evelyn calling from downstairs. "Malcolm, come to my room. Now." He went down. As soon as he closed the door, Evelyn grabbed his arm. Her face had gone pale. "A lawyer came to see your father this afternoon while you were still away. They stayed behind closed doors for more than an hour. I thought something was wrong, so later I took him some water and listened outside." She swallowed. "Malcolm, he's having the lawyer revise his estate plan and the company succession documents." Malcolm stared at her. Evelyn continued. "He said the person he wants to succeed him isn't you, it's Alicia." The crystal glass in Malcolm's hand hit the floor and shattered. Red wine spread across the pale stone. "Did you hear him clearly? You're sure you didn't misunderstand?" "I heard him. He said Alicia's name. He said if he leaves Whitmore Holdings in your hands, you'll destroy it within 3 years. He said Alicia is the only one who can keep the company together." Evelyn looked at her son. "What are you going to do? Are you really going to let everything your father built go to a foster girl who came into this family with nothing?" Malcolm didn't answer. He bent down and picked up a shard of broken glass. That seat is mine. His voice was low and cold. His hand closed around the shard, and blood ran across his palm. What belongs to me, no one gets to take. Not even her. For the next several days, Malcolm's right hand stayed wrapped in a white bandage. Whenever anyone asked, he said a broken glass had cut him while he was pouring a drink. No one noticed that something about him had changed after that night. He shouted less and stopped slamming his fist on tables. Instead, he spent his nights alone in his office. The screen in front of him no longer showed company projects. It showed articles, photographs, and every piece of information he could find about one woman, Camille, the only heir to Sterling Holdings. At the same time, Camille was looking through a file on Malcolm in her luxury condo overlooking Rittenhouse Square. Victor stood near the window as she turned through page after page. "Camille, do you still remember why we came back?" She looked up. "Victor, how could I forget?" Victor took an old photograph from his wallet and placed it on the table. In it was a young woman in a white dress, smiling at the camera. "Jasmine. She raised you like a sister. She fed you when you were little. She taught you songs. Then she met Malcolm." Victor looked at the photograph. He promised to invest in her career. He promised marriage. He took her money, used her reputation, and when he was done with her, he paid people in the media to destroy her name. Jasmine couldn't endure what followed. She took her own life at 29. He looked at Camille. "I raised you after she was gone. I'm asking you for one thing. Never forget who drove her to that point." "I haven't forgotten. Not for one day." Camille picked up the photograph. "I'll get close to him. I'll make him fall for me. Then I'll take everything from him. His money, his company, his reputation, his family. Whatever Jasmine lost because of him, I'll make him lose 10 times more." Victor watched her. He knew the most dangerous part of this plan wasn't deceiving Malcolm. It was using feelings to do it. And there was already something Camille did not want to admit. Her eyes had begun lingering on Malcolm's photographs longer than they needed to. Malcolm, meanwhile, had not given up after being embarrassed at the airport. He learned that Camille loved art. At a charity auction, he paid twice the expected price for a painting she wanted, then had it delivered to her with a handwritten note. "A beautiful painting belongs with someone who understands it. I only brought it to the right place." After that, Malcolm found more reasons to cross paths with her. Camille recognized exactly what he was doing. To her, the man she planned to trap was walking into the trap on his own. She began accepting dinners and invitations, letting him pursue her as planned. But one part of the plan had already started slipping beyond her control. Some nights, she found herself waiting for her phone to light up with a message from him. While Malcolm was setting his trap outside the house, the atmosphere inside the Whitmore estate grew more strained by the day. That Friday night, the family sat around the dinner table. Richard ate upstairs because of his health. Malcolm being home for dinner was unusual, but through most of the meal, he kept looking at his phone, his mouth lifting whenever a new message appeared. Maya sat beside Alicia. Happy to have her father at the table, she said, "Dad, my teacher picked my drawing to put up in the hallway today." "And what is drawing supposed to do for you?" Malcolm asked. "What did you get on your reading quiz last week? You didn't mention that." Maya stopped eating. 62. Malcolm set his phone down. "I pay more than $30,000 a year for that school. And you bring home a 62? He looked at her. "Read the passage you learned today. Stand up." Maya got to her feet, holding the bottom of her shirt with both hands. She started reading. After 2 sentences, her words began running together and her eyes filled with tears. "Stupid. You can't even read a simple paragraph. Who did you get that brain from? It certainly wasn't this family." "Malcolm, that's enough." Alicia put down her fork and pulled Maya toward her, placing herself between her daughter and Malcolm. "She's 7 years old. If she gets something wrong, we teach her. You don't humiliate a child at the dinner table. Look at her. She's scared of you." "Everyone hear that?" Evelyn cut in. "Her husband is trying to discipline his own daughter, and she thinks she can argue with him." She looked at Alicia. "And what makes you think you know anything about raising a child? You grew up without parents. You were raised in foster care. What would you know about family?" The dining room went silent. Maya buried her face against Alicia. Alicia held her and looked at Evelyn. For the first time in 10 years, she did not lower her eyes. You can say whatever you want about me. I've taken it for years. But I'm asking you and Malcolm not to say things like that in front of Maya. She's a child. She hasn't done anything wrong. Evelyn stared at her. So now you've learned to talk back to me? Alicia did not answer. She lifted Maya into her arms and carried her upstairs, leaving Evelyn's voice behind them. After overhearing Richard's plans for the succession, Evelyn could barely eat or sleep. One day, while Alicia took Richard to a medical appointment, Evelyn went into his room and searched through his drawers for the estate documents. She didn't find them. But inside a locked cabinet she opened with a spare key, she found a life insurance file. The policy was worth $2 million. Richard was the insured, and Alicia was listed as the beneficiary. Evelyn stared at the document. To her, it was the weapon she had been looking for. That night, Malcolm came home late after drinking with clients. Evelyn was waiting in the living room with the file on the table. Malcolm, come here. You need to see this before you go to bed. He picked up the file and stopped when he reached Alicia's name. Evelyn leaned toward him. Do you understand now? Your father has a $2 million life insurance policy, and Alicia gets the money if he dies. She's already about to get the company, and now this. Malcolm looked down at the paperwork. She takes care of him every day, brings him food, gives him his medication, checks everything for him. You think she does all of that for nothing? Malcolm had been drinking, and the anger he had carried since learning Richard planned to choose Alicia was already there. Whether Evelyn's conclusion was true no longer mattered to him. He took the file and went upstairs. Alicia was sitting on the bed reading to Maya before bedtime when the door opened. Malcolm threw the insurance papers toward her. They scattered across the bed. You're good, Alicia. Really good. My father has a life insurance policy with you as the beneficiary. How long have you been waiting for him to die? Alicia looked at the papers. What are you talking about? What policy? Don't pretend you don't know. Malcolm, stop. Maya is right here. He moved toward her. Alicia pulled Maya against her. Her head hit the side of the bed, and pain shot through her face. Mom! Maya cried and wrapped herself around Alicia. Malcolm moved again, but Maya's scream made him stop. Alicia looked up at him. Listen to me, Malcolm. I did not take out that policy. Ask Richard yourself. She held Maya against her. You put your hands on me tonight. I will remember that. If you ever do it again in front of our daughter, I will divorce you. I mean it. Are you threatening me? Get out. You're scaring her. Malcolm stood there, then kicked the chair beside him and left, slamming the door behind him. That night, Alicia slept beside Maya. Maya woke several times, crying and reaching for her mother. Alicia stayed awake until morning. 2 weeks later, Alicia learned she was pregnant. She sat in the clinic while the doctor told her she was 6 weeks along and the pregnancy looked healthy. On the way home, she pulled over and sat behind the wheel with one hand on her stomach. She knew what her marriage had become. But part of her still held on to one hope. Maybe this baby could bring Malcolm back. Maybe becoming a father again would bring back some part of the boy who had once handed her a white handkerchief. Alicia decided to tell him when the right moment came. She didn't have to wait long. That Wednesday, Alicia went to an upscale hotel in Center City for a scheduled meeting with a business partner. The meeting ended early. As she crossed the lobby, the elevator from the guest room floors opened. Malcolm stepped out first. Camille came out behind him, and Malcolm's hand rested behind her waist. They were talking and laughing as they walked toward the exit. Alicia watched Malcolm escort Camille to her car. He leaned toward her and said something that made Camille laugh and tap him on the chest. Alicia waited in the parking garage. When Malcolm came back alone to get his car, she stepped in front of him. Malcolm? He stopped. Are you following me? I came here for a meeting. The company scheduled it. You can ask my assistant if you want. What were you doing here with Camille? Business. Sterling Holdings is looking at an investment in resort development. I'm vice chairman. Who else is supposed to meet with her? Business on the guest room floor? With your hand around her waist? Enough. Malcolm stepped closer. What I do is my business. Remember something, Alicia. The only reason you have the life you have now is because you're my wife. Learn when to keep your mouth shut. Alicia looked at him. The words she had planned to save for a happier moment stayed in her throat. Then she said them. Malcolm, I'm pregnant. 6 weeks. It's your baby. Malcolm was silent for 3 seconds. Then he laughed. Pregnant? You think you can use another baby to tie me to you? It's too late. Get rid of it. Alicia stared at him. What did you just say? I said get rid of it. One child who can barely read is enough. I don't need another reason to be tied to you." He pushed past her, got into his car, and drove away. Alicia stayed in the garage with both hands over her stomach. That night, she sat outside until almost morning. By sunrise, she had made one final decision. She would give up the one thing Malcolm wanted most if it meant her children could still have their father. The next morning, she knocked on his office door. "Malcolm, I need to talk to you. I'm keeping the baby. That is not up for discussion. But I will go to Richard and ask him to give you the chairman's position. I'll also step away from daily operations while I'm pregnant. I won't compete with you for anything." She looked at him. "I'm asking for one thing. End whatever is happening with Camille. Come home and be a father to your children." Malcolm studied her. The chairman's position was being offered to him. He had nothing to lose by making a promise. "Fine. But if you say you'll do it, then do it." That afternoon, Alicia went to Richard's room and told him everything. Richard listened without interrupting. When she finished, he looked at her. "You're making a mistake. Richard, please. I only want Maya and this baby to have a family." Richard watched her for a long time. "All right. Let me handle the succession. You go rest. You're pregnant. You shouldn't be putting yourself through this." 3 weeks later, Whitmore Holdings called an emergency shareholders meeting. Richard would announce his successor. By then, word had already spread through the company that Alicia planned to step away from daily operations during her pregnancy. No one needed to guess who they thought would get the position. Malcolm ordered a new suit and even had someone help prepare his acceptance speech. The night before the meeting, he celebrated with a few close friends. Evelyn spent the morning at church, convinced her son was finally about to receive what belonged to him. That morning, the main conference hall was filled with shareholders, senior executives, and reporters from several business publications. Alicia chose a seat in the middle rows. Under her loose dress, her stomach had begun to show. Richard was brought onto the stage in a wheelchair. His body was weaker than before, but he sat upright. When he took the microphone, his voice was slow but clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, I built Whitmore Holdings from a small workshop with 12 employees. For 40 years, I have treated this company like my first child and the people who work here like family. I'm getting older, and my health is no longer what it was. It is time for someone else to take charge of this company." He stopped and looked across the room. Malcolm sat in the front row with his back straight, his acceptance speech already in his hand. Richard looked at his son, then passed him toward the middle rows. "The person the board and I have selected to succeed me, based on ability, character, and 10 years of contribution to this company, is..." Malcolm started to rise from his chair and buttoned his jacket. "Alicia." The room broke into applause. Alicia remained in her seat, staring at the stage. Her face lost its color, and both hands moved to her stomach. Malcolm stood in the aisle, caught halfway between sitting and standing. "That's impossible." He looked at his father. "Say that again." Hundreds of eyes turned toward him. Evelyn jumped to her feet. "Richard, have you lost your mind? She's your daughter-in-law. She's an outsider. She came into this family with nothing. You're going to hand the Whitmore legacy to her instead of your own son?" "Keep order in the room," Richard said into the microphone. Then he looked directly at Evelyn and Malcolm. "I have not lost my mind. That is exactly why I will not gamble the livelihoods of thousands of employees on someone who knows how to talk but has never learned how to protect what this company built," he continued. "And as for who is family and who is an outsider, I have spent the last few years watching from a sickbed. I know better than anyone who has stood by this family." Evelyn moved toward the stage. "You!" She grabbed a bottle of water from the table and threw it toward Alicia. "It's because of you! You've destroyed this family!" Alicia turned and covered her stomach. Before the bottle reached her, a young man from the next row stepped in front of her. The bottle hit him and fell to the floor. He was in his late 20s. He stayed between Alicia and Evelyn. "I'm sorry. I know I'm only an employee, but Alicia is pregnant. If that bottle had hit her and something happened, this wouldn't be a private family argument anymore." He looked toward the reporters. "And there are cameras recording all of this." The room went silent. Several cameras turned toward Evelyn. She opened her mouth, then stopped. Alicia looked at the man who had stepped in front of her. She recognized him as Andre, a former young actor who had joined Whitmore Holdings' communications department 2 months earlier. Andre turned to her. "Alicia, Are you okay? You should sit down. You look pale. I'm fine, thank you. Across the aisle, Malcolm still stood with his acceptance speech crushed in his hand. He looked at Richard on the stage, then at Alicia as Andre helped her back into her seat. The room was applauding the new chairwoman. Malcolm stayed there, his jaw locked. Then he tore his acceptance speech in half and threw it onto the floor. Fine. All of you remember this. He turned and walked out of the hall. After the shareholders' meeting, the Whitmore estate split into two sides. On one side were Richard's room and the rooms Alicia shared with Maya, where people still checked on one another and Maya still read aloud each night. On the other were Evelyn's room and Malcolm's, where the doors stayed shut and mother and son often talked behind them until late. Malcolm rarely came home for dinner anymore. He left in the morning and returned around midnight, smelling of alcohol and perfume that was not Alicia's. Alicia took over as chairwoman under circumstances no one would have wanted. She was 4 months pregnant, her husband treated her like an enemy, and Evelyn looked at her as if she had stolen everything from the family. Alicia arranged to go into Whitmore Holdings only 3 days a week. She handled urgent work remotely and spent most of her time resting and caring for Richard. Since the shareholders' meeting, his health had declined. He had lost weight and slept poorly. Alicia thought that if she could make it to the birth of her baby, things might settle down. But she was not given that chance. On Saturday afternoon, a message arrived from an unknown number. Center City Hotel, room 1206. Your husband is here. The door isn't locked. Alicia stared at the message for a long time. Reason told her not to go. It was too obvious that someone wanted her to see something. But she still put on her coat and drove to the hotel. Room 1206 was not locked. Alicia pushed the door open. Camille sat on the edge of the sofa in a bathrobe, pouring herself a glass of wine. Malcolm was lying on the bed without a shirt. When he saw Alicia, he sat up. Camille showed no sign of embarrassment. She put down the bottle and looked at Alicia. Oh, you came. I was afraid you'd be too busy to make it. Come in. Don't stand in the doorway. Someone might see you. Alicia understood then. Camille had sent the message. She had left the door open on purpose. She wanted Alicia to see this. Alicia, I'm going to tell you something. You should know when to let go. Men get tired of eating the same food at home. Sometimes they want something different. Malcolm told me he can barely breathe when he's around you. You can keep a man in the house, but you can't keep his heart. Let go now and save all 3 of us the trouble. Alicia did not remember crossing the room. She only felt the sting in her palm after the slap landed across Camille's face. The room went silent. Shut your mouth. How I live with my husband is between him and me. Who are you to tell me what I should do? Camille held her cheek and stared at Alicia. Alicia lost her balance and caught the back of a chair to steady herself. Malcolm moved in front of Camille. He pointed at Alicia. Have you lost your mind? What gives you the right to hit her? Alicia laughed, but tears filled her eyes. One hand remained over her stomach as she stood facing him. What gives me the right? Malcolm, I am your wife. Our names are still on the marriage certificate. I am carrying your child, and you are standing there protecting your mistress after she insulted me. And you're asking what gives me the right? My wife? Malcolm stepped toward her. You still dare call yourself my wife? You took my chairman's seat and humiliated me in front of hundreds of shareholders. And now you expect me to act like your husband? He looked at her. You want me back home? You want your children to have their father? Fine. Give me the chairman's seat. As long as you're sitting above me, don't expect me to come home. Choose. Alicia looked at him for a long time. That position is not mine to give away whenever I want. It represents Richard's life's work and the livelihoods of thousands of employees. Richard was right. Put this company in your hands, and you'll destroy it within 3 years. She looked at Malcolm. If you want to stay here, stay. But remember this, from today on, don't ever talk to me about what we owe each other as husband and wife. Alicia turned and walked out without looking back. Behind her, Camille held her cheek and watched her leave. For a moment, the triumph in her expression disappeared, replaced by something harder to name, as if she had just caught a glimpse of where her own choices might take her. News of the hotel confrontation reached Evelyn. When she heard about it, she slammed the table. What kind of woman is trying to steal my son? I'll go there myself and deal with her. This family already has one woman causing trouble. Now there's another? Evelyn kept raging for 2 days. On the 3rd day, Camille came to the Whitmore estate herself, carrying expensive gifts. She greeted Evelyn and sat down with her. "Evelyn, I know you're angry with me. I'm not going to make excuses. But think about what happened to Malcolm. The chairman's position was taken from him right in front of everyone. I hated seeing that happen to him." Camille continued. "Sterling Holdings is preparing to invest $25 million in the U.S. market, and Victor has given me the authority to choose our partner. I'm waiting for one thing. Malcolm needs to be the person in control of Whitmore Holdings. I'm not putting my family's money into the hands of the woman who took his position." $25 million was enough to change Evelyn's attitude. She looked at Camille again. Young, beautiful, and from a wealthy family. Compared with the foster girl she believed had taken her son's position, Camille now looked much more like the woman Evelyn wanted beside Malcolm. "Now I understand. I thought Malcolm was just fooling around. You really do care about him." Within a week, Evelyn was calling Camille the daughter I never had, and treating her better than she had ever treated Alicia. That evening, Camille came to dinner with Malcolm. Richard was feeling better that day and joined the family downstairs. He had just picked up his fork when Malcolm walked in with Camille. Camille pulled out the chair beside Malcolm and sat down. She began putting food on his plate as if she belonged there. Richard looked at them. "Who is she?" "Malcolm, who did you bring into this house?" Camille smiled. "You don't have to ask, Malcolm. I'm Camille. Evelyn says I'm the daughter she never had. And one day, I'll be your daughter-in-law too." She reached for the serving dish. "Dad, let me get you some food before it gets cold." Richard's fork fell onto the table. He braced one hand against the table and struggled to rise. The stroke had weakened half his body, but his voice carried across the room. "Who gave you permission to call me Dad?" He turned toward Malcolm. "Your wife is sitting right there carrying your child, and you bring another woman into this house and seat her at this table? Do you still consider me your father?" Malcolm stood. The resentment he had carried since losing the chairman's position came out at once. "And what about you? Have you ever treated me like your son? My whole life, all you've done is call me stupid and say I ruin everything. Then you took the company and handed it to someone you brought in from outside the family." He looked at Richard. "If you don't consider me your son, then don't expect me to keep treating you like my father." "You." Richard tried to speak, but the words stopped. His face changed. His hand gripped the edge of the table, then his body collapsed. Alicia rushed toward him and called for an ambulance. Maya cried and clung to her grandfather's leg. The room broke into chaos. Evelyn, Malcolm, and Camille remained where they were. Richard survived the crisis, but this time he remained in the hospital. The paralysis on one side of his body had worsened, and his speech had been reduced to broken sounds. His eyes were still alert, and he still wore his hearing device, which he refused to let anyone remove, even while he slept. One evening in the hospital hallway, Camille leaned against Malcolm and said, "I know this sounds terrible, but your father lying there like this is hard on him and hard on everyone else. If he were gone, a lot of things would become easier. The controlling shares are still in his name. You're his only son, no matter how they divide them. Stop talking nonsense." Malcolm cut her off, but the thought stayed with him. The next person to push him closer to the edge was Alicia. While Richard remained in the hospital, Alicia received an urgent report from the finance department. Malcolm had authorized company assets and shares under his own name as collateral for nearly $12 million in financing for a resort project in Cape May County, New Jersey. Alicia ordered a review. The project did not have the required approvals. The developer was a shell company formed only months earlier, and money was disappearing as soon as it was released. Alicia called an emergency leadership meeting. Malcolm arrived with Camille, who attended as a representative of Sterling Holdings. In front of the entire leadership team and Camille, Alicia placed the file on the table. Effective today, Malcolm's authority to sign contracts and represent Whitmore Holdings is suspended. All funding connected to the Cape May project is frozen. The file will be transferred to legal for review and determination of responsibility. Malcolm stared at her. "Alicia, you dare take away my authority? I am the founder's son." "Who are you to do that?" Alicia looked at him. "In this room, I am the chairwoman, and if that $12 million cannot be recovered, you may be facing more than the loss of your title." Meeting adjourned, the executives began leaving the room. Malcolm remained in his chair. Losing his authority was humiliating enough. Having Camille sit beside him and watch Alicia strip it away made it worse. On the way to the parking garage, Camille said nothing. She only let out a sigh. That sound cut deeper into Malcolm's pride than an argument would have. That night, Malcolm called Calvin, his trusted assistant, into his office and closed the door. Their conversation continued until almost 2 a.m. 1 week later, the trap was set in motion. On Monday morning, Alicia had just entered the lobby of Whitmore Holdings when 4 investigators were waiting for her with a search warrant. Her personal bank account showed 3 payments totaling nearly $250,000 from a contractor bidding on a major Whitmore project. An anonymous complaint had also been submitted with the account numbers, dates, and transaction details. Alicia was taken in for questioning in front of hundreds of employees while phones came out across the lobby. By that afternoon, business outlets were reporting that Whitmore Holdings' new chairwoman was under investigation for taking kickbacks. In the interview room, Alicia sat with both hands over her stomach. She was more than 5 months pregnant. She answered each question. She did not know the contractor. She had never given that company her account information. She had known nothing about the 3 transfers until that morning. As she spoke, Alicia understood that whoever had built the case against her had access to information from deep inside the company. Richard was not the only person who believed she was innocent. Andre worked in communications, but before acting and later moving into corporate work, he had studied information technology for 3 years. Several of his closest friends now worked in cybersecurity. While people inside Whitmore Holdings argued about whether Alicia was guilty, Andre took a copy of the anonymous complaint that a contact in the press had obtained and brought it to his friends. Over the next 3 days, they traced the electronic complaint. It had been sent through a disposable account, but the connection used at the time led back to a private security company in King of Prussia. Corporate records connected that company to Calvin, Malcolm's assistant. Further ownership records also led back to Malcolm. Andre brought the findings to Alicia's attorney. The information alone did not prove who had arranged the scheme, but it gave investigators reason to examine whether the accusation had been manufactured by someone with a direct financial conflict with Alicia. The 3 payments were also tied to authorization documents bearing forged signatures. After 10 days in custody, Alicia was released pending further investigation, with restrictions on travel. She walked out of the detention center on a rainy afternoon, thinner than before, her pregnancy visible beneath her coat. Andre was waiting with an umbrella. He did not try to comfort her with a long speech. He walked her to the car. Before closing the door, he said, "Alicia, take care of yourself. This isn't over. I believe you're innocent, and I'm not the only one." Malcolm was the one panicking now. The bribery setup had failed. Alicia had been released, and he was hearing that investigators were beginning to look into the private company connected to him. At the same time, news came from the hospital that made him even more uneasy. Richard had improved enough to form a few words again, and he had signaled to the nurse that he wanted to see his lawyer on Thursday morning. Evelyn went to visit her husband and tried to find out what he was planning. Richard only looked at her, then turned his face toward the wall. When she got home, she told Malcolm, "I think he wants to meet the lawyer and transfer the controlling shares to Alicia before he testifies for her. And I'm afraid he knows something else about you. The other day, when I mentioned Alicia being arrested, the way he looked at me, it was like he knew everything." On Wednesday night, the evening before Richard was supposed to meet his lawyer, Malcolm went to the hospital. He arrived during the nursing shift change, carrying a bag of fruit and acting like a devoted son. Richard was in a private room. The caregiver who usually stayed with him was given money and told to go get something to eat. When the door closed, only father and son remained in the room. Richard was half asleep. He opened his eyes when he heard Malcolm approach, and a trace of caution appeared in them. Malcolm pulled a chair beside the bed. "Dad, you're meeting the lawyer tomorrow, aren't you? You're planning to give all the shares to Alicia, aren't you? Do you hate me that much? I'm your son." Richard tried to answer, but only broken sounds came from his throat. His working hand moved toward the nurse call button. Malcolm stopped him and placed his hand back on the bed. Then he took a small syringe from his coat pocket and injected its contents into the IV line. "Don't blame me. You pushed me this far." Within minutes, Richard began struggling to breathe. His chest tightened, and he stared at Malcolm from the bed. His hand lifted and pointed toward his son as he tried to force out a word, but his damaged speech would not cooperate. In the struggle, Richard caught the side of the bed and slipped to the floor. The heart monitor began alarming. Malcolm stood there for several seconds, then put the syringe back into his pocket, opened the door, and shouted for a doctor like a son who had just discovered his father in distress. The hospital report stated that Richard had suffered a sudden cardiac episode and fallen from the bed during the emergency. He died at 11:40 that night. The next morning, when the hospital returned Richard's belongings to the family, a nurse handed over a tray containing his old watch, his reading glasses, and the hearing device he had refused to remove even while sleeping. Evelyn took everything home and put the items away in a cabinet without giving them another thought. Richard's funeral drew shareholders, employees, business partners, and people who had known him for decades. Flowers filled the funeral home. Alicia wore black and stayed near his casket through the service. Richard had been the only person in that family who had truly treated her like a daughter. Now he was gone, and Alicia felt orphaned all over again. Before the funeral had ended, several investigators arrived. Alicia looked up, confused, when they approached her. "Alicia, you are being placed under arrest in connection with Richard's death." She stared at them. "What are you talking about? His death? You think I killed him?" Evelyn answered before anyone else could. She stepped forward and pointed at Alicia. "She did it. She killed my husband. I saw her go into his hospital room that evening carrying a bag. And there's the life insurance policy. Richard dies, and she gets $2 million. She was already trying to take control of the company. What more proof do you need?" People around them began whispering. The autopsy had found a substance in Richard's blood that was not part of his medical orders. Investigators searched Alicia's car. In the trunk, they found a small glass vial containing traces of the same substance. Her fingerprints were on it. Alicia stared at the vial. She had never seen it before, but she understood what was happening. Someone had planted it there, just as someone had planted the money in her account. Handcuffs were placed around her wrists while she stood only feet from the casket of the man she had loved like a father. Alicia was 6 months pregnant. Before she was led away, she saw Maya crying and trying to reach her from the arms of a housekeeper. Then Alicia looked across the room and saw Malcolm standing near the wall in black funeral clothes. He watched her without expression. In the days that followed, Alicia's situation worsened. The family law firm that had represented the Whitmores for years sent notice that it would not represent her because of a conflict of interest. Alicia asked people to contact 3 other law firms. All 3 refused within a day of receiving the case file. One attorney even told her over the phone, "I'm sorry, but someone doesn't want us taking this case. We still have to stay in business." All of Alicia's accounts were frozen because she was tied to 2 criminal investigations. In detention, she kept writing statements declaring her innocence until the words blurred beneath her tears. The case reached court near the end of fall. Alicia was almost 7 months pregnant and had lost so much weight that her cheekbones showed. By then, the court had appointed an attorney to represent her, but the lawyer had only recently received the case and had little time to challenge the evidence already built against her. Alicia sat beside counsel and listened as the prosecution laid out its case. Against her were the forensic report, the vial bearing her fingerprints, the $2 million life insurance policy, and Evelyn, dressed in mourning clothes, testifying against her. Evelyn cried as she pointed at Alicia and described details that had been arranged to sound true. When the prosecutor began describing the charges and the prison time Alicia could face if convicted, her hearing faded. The courtroom seemed to move around her, and a sharp pain tore through her lower abdomen. She bent forward as everything around her blurred. The last thing she heard was someone shouting for medical help before everything went dark. Alicia woke in a hospital room and instinctively reached for her stomach. The baby could not be saved. It had been a boy. Alicia lay there staring at the white ceiling. She could no longer cry. One hand remained over her stomach as if she were still trying to comfort the child who was no longer there. The door opened without a knock. Malcolm walked in wearing a black suit and carrying a stack of papers. He looked at Alicia on the hospital bed, then pulled the small table closer and placed the documents on it. He set a pen on top. "Divorce papers. And an agreement transferring all of your shares to me. Sign them." Alicia looked at him. "Are you even human? My baby just died." "Your baby. He was your son. Do you understand that?" Malcolm's expression did not change. He adjusted the pen on the papers. "You still have another child. Maya is with me. Her mother is accused of killing her grandfather. Soon her whole school will know. Think about her before you answer me." Alicia went still. Malcolm left the papers there and walked out. The documents stayed untouched beside her bed all night. The next morning, Malcolm returned. This time, he took out his phone and held several photographs in front of her. In the first, Maya stood in a corner of the schoolyard while several children pointed at her. In the second, someone had written words across her desk calling her the daughter of a killer. In the third, Maya sat alone in a school bathroom with her knees pulled to her chest and her face hidden in her arms. These were taken 2 days ago. Only a few kids know so far, and she's already like this. Think about what happens when the whole school knows. When everyone knows her mother is accused of killing her grandfather. She's 7 years old. Stop. If you want me to stop, then think about her. You're still facing another serious charge. I'm different. I can move her to another school. I can change her environment so no one knows what happened. I can also make your case easier. All you have to do is sign these 2 sets of papers. Divorce. Transfer the shares. He looked at her. You get out. Maya gets peace. You only lose what you can't keep anymore. Alicia looked at the photographs of her daughter curled up alone in the bathroom. For 10 years, she had carried one burden after another, but she had never felt this exhausted. A person could endure pain aimed at themselves. A mother could not stand watching that pain land on her child. Alicia picked up the pen. Her thin hand shook as she signed each page. At the last page of the share transfer agreement, she stopped and looked up at Malcolm. I signed. Keep your word. Leave Maya alone. And whether I'm guilty or not, heaven knows, Richard knows, and you know too. Don't you? Malcolm did not answer. He gathered the papers, checked every signature, and put them into his briefcase. At the door, he stopped. Don't blame me. You forced me into this. Malcolm kept only half of his promise. The murder case began to collapse after Evelyn changed her statement and said the hospital hallway had been dark and she might have mistaken who she saw. The vial was also challenged because of problems with how it had been collected. With insufficient evidence, that investigation was suspended. But the bribery case remained. New spending records appeared carrying Alicia's forged signature. At that point, a retired attorney agreed to help her without charging a fee. During a visit, the older woman told her, Alicia, I've practiced law for 40 years. I can see someone is trying to bury you with this case. You can keep fighting for years, but Maya cannot wait for years. Accept responsibility on a lesser corporate compliance charge tied to the financial records, serve the shorter sentence, then get out and decide what to do next. Alicia thought about it and finally followed her advice. She received a 6-month sentence. 6 months meant only half a year to everyone else. To Alicia, separated from her daughter after losing her unborn son, every day felt endless. During those 6 months, the Whitmore estate changed. Camille moved in after marrying Malcolm, now with a new marriage certificate making her place in the house official. Alicia's room was emptied. Her belongings were packed into bags and thrown into storage. Camille had the room repainted, replaced the curtains and the bed, and removed every trace of the woman who had lived there before her. There was only one trace she could not erase: a 7-year-old girl with her mother's eyes. At the first family dinner after the wedding, Camille put food into Maya's bowl. Eat, Maya. From now on, you can call me Mom. Mom Camille. Maya put down her fork and looked at the table. I already have a mom. My mom is Alicia. Your mom? Where is she then? She went away for work. The housekeeper said she'll come back for me. Camille laughed. She leaned closer to Maya. Away for work? Who told you that? Alicia is in prison. Your mother is a bad person. Everyone knows what she did. You're the only one who doesn't. Maya looked up. No, you're lying. My mom didn't kill Grandpa. I hate you. The rest of the meal passed under a heavy silence. Near midnight, after Maya had fallen asleep, Camille entered her room. Maya was holding the old family drawing with Alicia and Richard in it. Camille took it from her hands, tore it into pieces, and threw it into the trash. The pressure continued day after day. Maya became more withdrawn and more afraid around strangers. She also learned that showing how much she still loved Alicia only brought more punishment, so she stopped talking about her mother in front of the family. Outside prison, the person fighting hardest for Alicia, besides Andre, was a woman in her mid-20s who was rarely seen without a laptop backpack. Naya was not Alicia's biological sister. They had grown up together in the same church-supported children's home in Germantown and had considered each other sisters since childhood. Nia had been small and sickly as a child and often climbed into Alicia's bed at night. As they grew older, Alicia spent whatever money she could spare helping Nia stay in school. Nia graduated with a degree in journalism and became an investigative reporter in Washington, D.C., known for refusing to let go of a story once she started digging. When Alicia was arrested at Richard's funeral, Nia was on assignment in rural West Virginia. She returned to Philadelphia that night. From then on, she took unpaid leave and focused everything she knew about investigative reporting on one case, Alicia's. She followed Calvin and spent nights watching the places he regularly visited. She found the nurse who had been on duty the night Richard died, a woman who had resigned after the funeral and later moved to Florida. She also traced financial records connected to the shell company behind Malcolm's Cape May resort project. Piece by piece, the files in Nia's backpack grew thicker, and someone began paying attention. Nia noticed a man in a baseball cap at a cafe she visited, then saw him again near the place she was staying. She began hearing interference on her phone calls, she told Andre. The two became more careful, changed where they stayed, and changed phone numbers. But caution was not enough against someone with money and people willing to work for him. One rainy afternoon, Nia was driving along a wet rural highway when the steering on her compact sedan failed. Someone had tampered with the steering system. The car lost control and struck the barrier. Nia survived, but her left leg was so badly injured that doctors had to amputate below the knee. The laptop backpack containing the original copies of everything she had collected was destroyed in the crash and the fire that followed. 6 months of investigation disappeared with it. When Alicia finished serving her sentence, Nia was waiting outside with crutches. Andre stood beside her. The two sisters looked at each other, one thin and pale in old clothes, the other standing there with part of her left leg gone. Neither of them cried at first. Then Alicia walked over, dropped to her knees, and reached toward the empty lower part of Nia's pant leg. Her voice broke. "Nia, your leg. I'm sorry, this happened because of me. Get up, I'm still alive, that's what matters." Nia looked at her. "I'm getting a prosthetic soon. I'll walk again. I can even drive an automatic car. Come on, let's go home first." Home was now a modest rental house north of Philadelphia, toward the Pocono foothills, which Andre had helped them find. That first night of freedom, the three of them sat around a simple meal. Alicia asked only one question. "How is Maya?" Nia and Andre looked at each other. Neither wanted to answer. The next morning, Alicia went into Philadelphia and waited outside Maya's elementary school from early morning. At 7:15, the familiar luxury car from the Whitmore estate pulled up. The rear door opened, and Maya stepped out in her school uniform with a new backpack. She was much thinner than Alicia remembered. "Maya! Maya! It's Mom! Mom's here!" Alicia ran toward her and dropped to her knees with both arms open. For 6 months and 183 nights, this was the moment she had imagined inside prison. She had imagined Maya crying, "Mom," and running into her arms just as she used to. Maya took one step back. She stared at the thin woman kneeling in front of her, her eyes wide. Then she backed away again and turned toward the woman who had just stepped out of the front passenger seat. Maya wrapped herself around Camille's leg. "Mom, who is she? I'm scared." That one word cut through Alicia. Camille bent down and picked Maya up. She smoothed Maya's hair, kissed her cheek, then looked down at Alicia. "Oh, Alicia, you're out already? You'll have to understand. Maya has become afraid of strangers. Children are like that. They stay close to whoever takes care of them." Camille looked at Maya. "Be good and say hello to her. Then Mom will take you inside before you're late." Maya looked at Alicia. "Hello." Then she buried her face against Camille's shoulder. Camille carried her past Alicia and toward the school entrance. Alicia remained on her knees on the sidewalk, her arms still open with no one in them. That evening, Alicia sat in front of a cold dinner until Nia struck the table. "Have you cried enough? If crying could get Maya back, I'd buy you enough tears to cry for the rest of your life. Look at me. I lost my leg. The evidence burned. But I haven't given up because I know we're right. You lost your daughter and everything else, while the people who took it from you are living their lives. How long are you going to stay outside that school and cry?" Alicia looked up. That night, The three of them sat together until almost morning, writing down every detail they could remember from the evidence Naya had lost. Near 3 in the morning, Andre brought up the night Richard died. The hospital report said the family member present had gone out to call for help, while Malcolm had claimed he had been there through the emergency. Alicia sat upright. Her face changed. The hearing device. Nia looked at her. What? Richard's hearing device. He never went anywhere without it. He slept with it beside him or wore it. He used to say his ears were in that device. Alicia tried to remember. When he first got it, he told me it could record so he could replay what his doctors told him because he was afraid he would forget. She looked at Nia and Andre. If it was on that night? If it recorded anything? The three stared at one another. There was only one question left. Where was the device? Alicia remembered that Evelyn had received Richard's belongings from the hospital. She went to the Whitmore estate and stood outside the gate, asking only to have a few of Richard's personal belongings to remember him by. Evelyn came outside. Personal belongings? What right do you have to ask for anything of my husband's? If you don't leave, I'll call security. Not one thing that belonged to him is yours. Get out. Alicia had no choice but to leave. She did not know that Evelyn told the story over dinner that same night as if it were a joke. Malcolm was the only person at the table who did not laugh. He put down his fork and went upstairs to his office. Sitting alone in the dark, he remembered the hearing device and the recording feature Richard had once talked about. It had been with Richard that night, only a few feet away from Malcolm. Alicia had been out of prison for barely 2 weeks and was already searching for Richard's belongings. Every day she remained alive and kept looking was another day Malcolm would lose sleep. 3 days later, Alicia's phone rang. It was Malcolm. His voice sounded so pleasant that it made her uneasy. Alicia, I'm calling to tell you something. This Sunday is Maya's 8th birthday. I booked a small party at a resort in the Poconos. Lately, she's been waking up at night crying for her mother. Camille said that no matter what happened, you're still her biological mother. Come spend a few hours with her. Consider it something I'm allowing after 10 years together. Alicia gripped the phone. Every instinct told her Malcolm never did anything without a reason. But the words Maya has been crying for her mother crushed every warning inside her. She had gone 6 months without holding her daughter. All right, he'll come. Thank you. Alicia did not see Malcolm hang up and nod toward a tattooed man waiting in his office. Later that night, someone crawled beneath Alicia's old car, parked outside the rental house, and tampered with the braking system. Early Sunday morning, Alicia got up before dawn and wrapped Maya's birthday presents, a good set of art supplies and a white dress. Nia came into the room with her phone still in her hand. Alicia, the nurse finally answered. She agreed to talk about what happened during Richard's last night, but she'll only meet today. She's in Florida now. I booked a morning flight. Nia had learned to drive an automatic car after losing part of her left leg. I can't get a ride out here this early. Let me borrow your car to get to the airport. Alicia took out her keys and handed them to her. Drive carefully. The road down from here was wet yesterday. I know, Nia smiled. When you see Maya, hug her extra tight for me. She waved as the car pulled away and disappeared around the first bend. That was the last image Alicia ever had of her sister alive. One hand raised in goodbye and a smile in the morning light. 15 minutes later, Alicia's phone rang. Nia's name appeared on the screen. Alicia answered, but a stranger's voice came through instead. Are you related to the woman who owns this phone? Her car lost its brakes. You need to come now. Alicia ran out of the house and down the road. At the last curve, part of the guardrail had been torn open. Far below the roadside, Alicia's car lay overturned and burning. She tried to get closer, but several people held her back. Alicia screamed Nia's name until her voice gave out. When another burst of flame rose from the wreck, her knees gave way. After the fire was put out and Nia was recovered from the wreck, 2 unfamiliar men found Alicia sitting in shock at a nearby medical station. They took her to a black SUV. Victor was waiting inside. Alicia recognized him at once as the man who had been with Camille at the airport. Alicia, I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry my people were one step too late. Victor handed her a tablet. On the screen were nighttime surveillance images. A tattooed man was lying beneath Alicia's car outside the rental house. The timestamp showed 1 o'clock that morning. In the last image, his face was visible. My people have been watching Malcolm's men for months because of a personal debt I'll explain later. A debt involving Jasmine. We saw this man under your car last night, but we thought he was planting a tracker. We were wrong. Victor looked at her. He works with Calvin. Your brakes were sabotaged. Alicia, that was the car you were supposed to drive to the resort this afternoon. Alicia sat without moving. The pieces came together. Malcolm's pleasant phone call. Maya crying for her mother. The birthday party in the mountains. He had not invited Alicia there so she could see her daughter. He had invited her to die. And Nia had died in her place. In the car Alicia had handed her the keys to. Alicia had no tears left. She asked one question. Victor, does Malcolm believe I was the one who died in that car? Yes. The fire made immediate identification difficult, and the car and belongings point to you. Until everything is confirmed, everyone will assume the victim was Alicia. Alicia looked at him. Then let him believe it. Victor turned toward her. Alicia raised her eyes. The woman who had endured Malcolm for 10 years was no longer looking back at him. He killed Richard. He took Maya from me. I lost my baby because of what he did to me. Now Nia is dead because he tried to kill me. If he knows I'm alive, he'll keep coming until I really am dead. And Maya will stay in his hands. She paused. But if Alicia is dead, Malcolm will sleep well, and a man who sleeps well stops watching his back. Alicia looked at Victor. Help me. You want Malcolm to pay for what he did. So do I. Let the woman who died in that car be Alicia. Victor watched her for a long time, then held out his hand. All right. From this moment on, you have my help. Everything that followed moved quickly. The fire had made immediate visual identification difficult, so the initial identification relied heavily on the car, the identification, and the personal belongings found at the scene. All of them pointed to Alicia. By the time Malcolm heard about the crash, authorities and everyone around him believed Alicia had died. Victor used that confusion to move Alicia out of sight before Malcolm could learn the truth. Alicia knowingly allowed the mistaken identification to stand, because revealing herself would have put both her and Maya back in danger. Publicly, Nia was believed to have left the country soon afterward, while everyone focused on the woman they believed had died. Alicia's funeral was small and quiet at a funeral home outside Philadelphia. Malcolm came in a black suit with the expression expected of a grieving former husband. He placed flowers near Alicia's photograph and bowed his head. No one noticed the relief that crossed his face when he turned away. Camille stood beside him in black and remained in front of the photograph for several seconds, as if she needed to convince herself that Alicia would never return. Andre was the last person to leave. He had arrived early that morning and stayed until the funeral home was preparing to close. He stood in front of Alicia's photograph without speaking. When an employee finally came to tell him it was time to leave, Andre dropped to his knees beside the memorial and lowered his head. About 30 yards away, inside a black SUV parked behind a row of trees, Alicia watched through the window with a hat and mask covering most of her face. Her hand touched the glass, then dropped back to her lap. The vehicle pulled away. That night, Victor placed a folder on the table in front of her. It contained the business records and public-facing documents that would support the life waiting ahead of her. The photograph was hers, but the name printed across the profile was unfamiliar. Celeste Morgan. Victor poured 2 cups of tea and pushed one toward her. Alicia was buried today, so I'm asking you one last time. Who is the woman sitting in front of me now? Alicia looked down at the documents bearing the name Celeste Morgan, then raised her eyes. I'm Celeste. For the next year, no one saw the woman named Alicia again. Her grave remained outside Philadelphia with her name carved into the stone. From time to time, Andre came alone, left flowers, stood there for a while, then walked away. The woman who was supposed to be buried there was more than 9,000 miles away in Singapore, rebuilding herself piece by piece. The first 3 months were spent restoring her health. 6 months in prison, the loss of her unborn son, and Nia's death had left her body exhausted. Alicia went through treatment, physical therapy, and months of forcing herself to eat and sleep. She kept going because Maya was still in Malcolm's hands. The next 6 months were about becoming someone Malcolm would not recognize. Alicia changed enough of her appearance to blur what people remembered. She underwent a few subtle cosmetic procedures that altered the familiar lines of her face without making her look unnatural. Her long black hair was cut to her shoulders and dyed chestnut brown. her teeth were redone, and her wardrobe changed completely. She adjusted the way she spoke and learned to carry herself like someone who had spent years working internationally. There was one change Alicia practiced more than any other. She learned to use her left hand. She signed with it, held a glass with it, and trained herself to reach for things with it. Alicia had always been right-handed. Everyone in the Whitmore family knew that. Celeste would be left-handed. Victor also built a carefully protected, public-facing business profile around Celeste. Her story placed her childhood in New Orleans before years in Singapore, where she later became involved in investment management. More important than the details was the company behind her. Morgan Crest Capital had real money, real investments, and Victor's reputation supporting it. The night before Alicia returned to the United States, Victor sat with her on the balcony. "Once you go back, there's no turning around. Are you afraid?" "Yes." Alicia looked out over the city. "But do you know what scares me most? Maya growing up in their hands for another year. Compared with that, everything else is smaller." Victor nodded. "Then remember one thing. Don't rush. Malcolm is dangerous because he has money and because he has already crossed lines most people never would. If you want to bring him down, don't attack him directly. Let him put his own neck into the rope." He looked at her. "Greed, lust, pride. He already has all three. We only have to pull." The following March, Philadelphia's financial community began talking about a new arrival. Morgan Crest Capital, a Singapore-based investment fund, opened a representative office in Center City and announced that it was looking for opportunities in real estate, retail, and other sectors across the East Coast. The amount of capital behind the fund was large enough to attract attention immediately. The woman leading the new office made her first major public appearance at an investment conference in a luxury hotel in Center City. By the end of that evening, her business card had become one of the most sought after in the room. Celeste Morgan, Managing Director of Morgan Crest Capital. Malcolm was there that night too. The year since Alicia's death had taken him from the top of Whitmore Holdings into a decline he could no longer hide. 3 months after taking control with the shares Alicia had been forced to transfer and the inheritance he received after Richard's death, Malcolm backed 2 bad investments recommended by people he drank with. Both lost heavily. The bank increased pressure over the old resort financing. Experienced employees kept leaving, and Whitmore Holdings survived, largely because money from Sterling Holdings continued flowing in through Camille. Other business people had given Malcolm a nickname he hated, the chairman living off his wife's money. That night, Malcolm came to the hotel hoping to secure a meeting with Morgan Crest Capital, just like dozens of other companies looking for funding. He made his way through the crowd toward the woman surrounded by executives in the middle of the reception hall. Then she turned around. The wine in Malcolm's glass shifted over the back of his hand, but he did not notice. The face was not the same. The nose was different. The eyes were shaped differently. The hair was different, and the way she carried herself was nothing like Alicia. But the build, and especially those dark eyes, made his back turn cold. For 1 second, Malcolm felt as though the woman buried a year earlier was standing beneath the lights in front of him. Celeste spoke first. "Malcolm, chairman of Whitmore Holdings, right? I've heard of you." Her voice was lower, with traces of an accent shaped by years abroad. She extended her left hand. Malcolm shifted his glass and shook it. "Yes. Hello, Celeste. Forgive me. You look very much like someone I used to know." "Really?" Celeste smiled. "People say everyone has a look-alike somewhere. I hope the person you knew was decent. I'd hate to inherit someone else's reputation." She turned back to another executive and continued the conversation, leaving Malcolm standing there with his thoughts racing. That same night, Malcolm called Calvin. "Investigate her. Celeste Morgan. Morgan Crest Capital. I want everything. Where she came from, where she grew up, everything from the day she was born until now. Spend whatever it takes." 3 weeks later, Calvin placed a thick file on Malcolm's desk. Everything Calvin could verify through public business records and professional references appeared consistent. Celeste had an established career in Singapore, and Morgan Crest's investments were real. Calvin had even checked Alicia's grave and reviewed the records connected to the crash. Everything still pointed to the same conclusion. Alicia was dead. "And there's one more thing," Calvin said. "Celeste is left-handed. She signs with her left hand, holds a glass with her left hand, everything. Alicia was right-handed." You remember that. Malcolm closed the file and exhaled. He had been imagining things. The dead stayed dead. He had stood at Alicia's funeral himself. He had seen her photograph. There were countless people in the world who resembled someone else. Once the suspicion faded, something else took its place. Greed and attraction. Celeste was beautiful, powerful, unmarried, and in control of a fund with money Whitmore Holdings badly needed. And her face carried just enough of Alicia to make Malcolm want to possess what had once frightened him. So he began pursuing Celeste with the same methods he had used on women before. Malcolm pursued Celeste the same way he had once pursued Camille. He learned what she liked, arranged chance encounters, and sent carefully chosen gifts. But this time, the woman he was chasing knew the game better than he did. Celeste neither pushed him away nor pulled him closer. Sometimes she was warm, sometimes distant. When she agreed to see him, she chose public places. She gave him hope, then left him wondering where he stood. The more she did it, the harder Malcolm pursued her. After dozens of meetings, they finally had a private dinner on the top floor of a French restaurant in Center City. Malcolm turned his wine glass in his hand and looked toward the windows. Celeste, there's something I've never told you. I used to have a wife. Her name was Alicia. We had known each other since we were young. She went through a lot because of me, but life wasn't kind to her. She died in a car accident. I still blame myself. If I hadn't been busy that day, if I had driven to pick her up myself, maybe none of it would have happened. He looked at Celeste. When I first saw you at the investment conference, I lost my composure because your eyes reminded me of hers. I know this may sound strange, but meeting you was the first time in years I felt something inside me come alive again. Beneath the white tablecloth, Celeste's left fingers dug into her palm. We had known each other since we were young. I still blame myself. If I had driven to pick her up. Every word pressed against a wound she had never forgotten. But above the table, Celeste only looked at him. I never knew you loved your wife that much. A man who still carries his wife in his heart like that is rare. Wherever she is now, I'm sure she would be touched. Malcolm believed that dinner had brought him closer to Celeste. Soon afterward, he invited her to the Whitmore estate for dinner, saying they could discuss investment in a more relaxed setting. Evelyn heard that the guest controlled a major investment fund and had the house cleaned from morning onward. She changed the flowers, ordered the staff around, dressed for the occasion, and went to the door herself when Celeste arrived. Celeste, what an honor. Please come in. You're even more beautiful in person. Our house is nothing special, so I hope you'll excuse us. Celeste looked at the woman bowing and smiling in front of her. This was the same woman who had slapped her in the kitchen, humiliated her for growing up without parents, and later accused her of killing Richard. Celeste smiled. You're too kind. If a house like this is considered ordinary, there can't be many impressive homes left in Philadelphia. Dinner was prepared with the best food Evelyn could arrange. Celeste ate with her left hand while her eyes moved around the room. The old furniture had been replaced. The wedding photograph of Alicia and Malcolm was gone, replaced by one of Malcolm and Camille. Richard's framed memorial portrait sat on a side table beside flowers that had already begun to wilt. In the middle of dinner, footsteps came from the stairs. A thin little girl with her hair tied to one side came down holding a school notebook. She stopped when she saw guests at the table. Celeste's hand paused. Maya. Her daughter was taller and thinner now, standing beside the railing like a child afraid of taking up too much space. 2 years had passed since Alicia had last been able to touch her. Celeste lifted her glass and took a drink before the emotion on her face could show. Maya, come say hello to our guest, Malcolm ordered. Maya walked toward the table. Hello. Then she looked up. Her dark eyes met Celeste's, and the child stopped. Maya stared at her face, tilting her head as if searching through a memory she could not reach. Why do you look familiar? I feel like I've seen you before. Everyone at the table laughed and said Maya was being cute. Only Celeste's left hand tightened around the fabric of her dress beneath the table. She lowered herself until she was closer to Maya's eye level. Really? Maybe I look like someone you know. Your name is Maya, right? That's a pretty name. What grade are you in? 3rd grade. That's enough. Children don't know anything. Go upstairs and finish your homework. The adults are talking. Camille's voice cut across the room. She was wearing a silk dress and full makeup, but the makeup could not hide the dark circles beneath her eyes or the tension in her face. Camille took Maya upstairs, then came back and sat beside Malcolm. She wrapped one arm around his. Malcolm removed her hand as if it were something in the way, then turned back to pour wine for Celeste. Camille sat there watching her husband smile at another woman, watching Evelyn put the best food onto Celeste's plate. And for the first time, she understood the taste of what Alicia had swallowed for years at this same dinner table. 3 weeks later, Camille drove to Whitmore Holdings to surprise Malcolm. The moment she entered the lobby, she saw something that made the blood rush to her face. Malcolm was placing his own suit jacket over Celeste's shoulders. The two walked toward the exit together, talking and smiling in front of dozens of employees. Camille rushed forward and grabbed at Celeste's hair. "You homewrecker! You think you can steal someone else's husband? I'll tear you apart." Celeste turned her head and avoided her grip. Then, in front of everyone in the lobby, her hand struck Camille across the face. "Camille, I am an investor putting money into your husband's company. I am not someone you get to attack in the middle of a corporate lobby." Celeste stepped closer. "And as for stealing someone's husband, I heard someone once told the wife in this family that when a man gets tired of what he has at home, he goes outside looking for something different. That you can keep a man in the house, but you can't keep his heart." She looked at Camille. "Whoever said that gave excellent advice. If you ever find her, give her my compliments." Camille held her cheek and stopped moving. Those words. She had said them herself in room 1206, directly to Alicia. And Alicia was supposed to be dead. Camille had not even recovered from the shock when Malcolm moved between them. History repeated itself almost exactly. He stood in front of Celeste and glared at his wife. "Have you lost your mind? This is a place of business. Celeste is putting money into this company. If she pulls out, your whole family loses too. Do you understand me? Go home." Camille stared at him. "Malcolm, you're yelling at me because of this woman? I'm your wife. Then act like one. Go home." Camille stood in the middle of the lobby with one cheek red and tears running through her makeup, watching her husband walk away beside another woman. Years earlier, in a hotel room, a pregnant woman had stood in almost the same position, watching the same man protect Camille instead of his wife. Karma did not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it simply made a person live through the exact scene they had once created for someone else. From that day on, Malcolm stopped trying to hide how cold he had become toward Camille. From that day on, Celeste began pulling the third string, Malcolm's pride. At a business dinner, she said, "Malcolm, I was with some people from the industry association the other day, and what they said made me angry for you. They said Whitmore Holdings is basically a subsidiary of Sterling Holdings now, that the chairman is only keeping the seat warm for his wife's family and even has to ask her for money to entertain clients. I argued with them for you." She looked at him. "But to be fair, a man running a major company while depending on a woman for cash flow does make it hard to hold his head high." Every word landed where Celeste intended. Malcolm went home looking at Camille differently. She no longer felt like the person supporting him. She felt like the chain attached to his humiliation. He needed money that did not come from Sterling. Celeste gave him the first piece of bait. Morgan Crest had access to a private investment opportunity involving shares in a Singapore fintech company preparing to go public. The opportunity was real, but highly speculative, and the allocation was limited to selected investors. Malcolm wanted in, but he had almost no available cash. He finally mentioned the opportunity to Camille. After months of being pushed aside by her husband and watching Celeste take more of his attention, Camille grabbed onto the last thing she believed still gave her value: money. She went to Celeste herself and asked for an allocation, wanting to prove to Malcolm that she could still bring him something. Celeste refused twice. The third time, she agreed. "I'm only making room for you because of Malcolm. But understand something, Camille. This is a high-risk investment. Nothing is guaranteed." Camille heard the warning and invested anyway. She emptied cash accounts and savings, borrowed against property in her own name, and sold or pledged jewelry her mother had left her. In the end, she put nearly $8 million into the deal through the authorized investment channel. She imagined that 3 months later, she would return to Malcolm with a profit large enough to make him look at her differently again. 3 months later, the Singapore Exchange suspended the fintech company's listing after serious accounting irregularities were uncovered. The shares collapsed in value. Camille had concentrated almost everything she owned into one speculative investment, and in a matter of days, most of her personal fortune was gone. At the same time, Whitmore Holdings faced a debt payment of nearly $15 million and could not raise the money. Malcolm went from lender to lender, but every door closed. The only door still open was Morgan Crest Capital. Celeste received him in her office over tea. After listening to his explanation, she nodded. $15 million. I can arrange funding within the week. Malcolm leaned forward. Celeste continued. But this is investor money, Malcolm. I have a responsibility to know where it goes. My conditions are simple. I come into Whitmore Holdings as senior advisor to the chairman. I get full access to the books and project files so I can see where our money is going. And I want a proper office inside the building. Malcolm barely hesitated. That's all? Of course. I'll have administration prepare a room for you on the executive floor, the best one available. The following Monday morning, Celeste walked into Whitmore Holdings as senior advisor and one of the company's most important sources of capital. The head of administration met her in the lobby and led her to the executive floor. Malcolm asked us to give you the large office at the end of the hall. It belonged to the previous chairwoman and has been unused for some time. We renovated it and replaced the furniture. The heavy wooden door opened. It was a corner office with windows overlooking the city. Alicia had once sat in that room signing major contracts, keeping Maya's photograph on the desk, and believing that if she tried a little harder, her family might still become whole. The paint was new. The desk was new. The curtains were new. Celeste walked into the center of the room and set her leather briefcase on the desk. Her left hand moved along the edge of the wood before she stopped beside the window. Celeste, is the room all right? Do you need us to change anything? Celeste kept looking out over the city. No. This office suits me. After losing nearly all of her personal money in the investment, Camille's position inside the Whitmore estate changed within a week. The person who turned against her fastest was Evelyn. Evelyn had quietly given Camille about $250,000 of her own money to put into the same opportunity, hoping to multiply it. That money was gone too. And the more Evelyn thought about the loss, the more she blamed Camille for convincing her to invest. It's 10 in the morning and you're still lying around? Get downstairs and make lunch. Camille stared at her. There are housekeepers. Housekeepers cost money. Where do you think the money comes from now? You lost mine along with yours. If you want people working for you, go get the money back first. The household staff was reduced to save money, and Camille found herself standing in the same large kitchen where Alicia had once worked. She struggled with hot pans and meals that Evelyn criticized and made her prepare again. The hands that had once carried designer bags were now marked by small kitchen burns. Camille cried to Malcolm. He did not look away from his phone. Do what my mother tells you. What else are you useful for right now? Years earlier, Malcolm had said almost the same thing to another woman. The house had not changed. Only the woman standing in the kitchen had. As Whitmore's senior advisor and creditor, Celeste entered the estate as an honored guest. Evelyn served her the best food, while Camille carried dishes with swollen eyes and her head lowered. Once, Evelyn pushed a plate away because the food was under-seasoned and ordered Camille to clean it up. Celeste thought she would feel satisfied watching it happen. She did not. She felt cold. Looking at Camille kneeling there, she saw the pattern more clearly than before. This house crushed every woman who entered it, one after another. And the people who kept that machine turning had still not paid for what they had done. Inside Whitmore Holdings, one person had begun watching the new advisor differently from everyone else. Andre was still working in communications. After Alicia's death, he had written a resignation letter, then torn it up. He told himself he needed to stay. Maybe one day he would find something that could clear the name of the woman everyone believed was dead. When Morgan Crest invested in Whitmore and Celeste moved onto the executive floor, Andre was curious like everyone else. Then came the first communications meeting she attended. His team presented a crisis response plan for a delayed project. Celeste listened with a red pen in her left hand. On the third page, she circled a compensation clause, tapped the tip of the pen against the paper twice, and said, "This part isn't there yet. If the other side pushes back on this wording, we won't have a strong answer. Fix it." Andre's hand stopped over his notes. Red pen. Circle. 2 taps. And those words. Alicia used to review documents the same way. He looked up at Celeste. Different face. Different voice. Even the hand she used was different. Andre told himself he was imagining things, but small details kept adding up. Celeste never drank coffee. She preferred strong tea, just like Alicia had. Whenever she passed Richard's memorial in the lobby, she paused for half a second and lowered her head. Once, inside a crowded elevator, a young employee dropped a stack of papers. Celeste was the first person to bend down and help gather them. "Take your time. No one's chasing you." Andre remembered Alicia saying almost the same thing to him years earlier when he dropped a tray of documents outside a meeting room. He began paying attention on purpose. Celeste noticed his eyes by the second meeting. She knew how observant Andre was, so she began treating him more coldly than anyone else. Whenever she assigned work to communications, her standards were twice as strict. When Andre greeted her, she gave him little more than a nod. When he asked to present something directly, she sent him to her assistant instead. Doing it hurt her, but Alicia knew that every step Andre took closer to her brought him closer to danger. Malcolm had already destroyed too many people in her life. She would not allow Andre to become the next one. At the Whitmore estate, the more trapped Camille felt, the more of her anger fell on the weakest person in the house, Maya. One Saturday afternoon, Camille searched through Maya's school bag and found a page in her notebook with a drawing of a woman with long hair. Beneath it, Maya had written 2 words, "My mom." "You drew her again?" Camille held up the page. "I feed you, I send you to school, and you're still drawing her? When are you going to forget her?" That afternoon, Celeste was at the estate discussing Whitmore's debt restructuring with Malcolm. When they finished, Malcolm stepped outside to take a phone call. Celeste asked to use the restroom upstairs. As she walked down the 3rd-floor hallway, she heard a child crying behind the door of a storage room at the end of the hall. The door was latched from the outside. Celeste stopped, then walked over and opened it. In the dim storage room, surrounded by bags and old belongings, Maya sat in a corner with her knees pulled to her chest. She was holding an old teddy bear with one damaged ear. Richard had given it to her for her birthday years earlier. Later, it had been thrown into storage with Alicia's belongings. "Don't be afraid, it's Celeste." Celeste went inside and left the door partly open before crouching beside her. Maya recognized her as one of Malcolm's regular guests and did not move away. She sniffled. "Please don't tell Mom Camille I was crying. If I cry, she keeps me in here longer." Alicia felt something tighten inside her. She pulled Maya into her arms. The child leaned against her, thin enough that Alicia could feel every bone through her clothes. Maya had cried herself tired, and her eyes began to close. In the dim room, Alicia fell back into an old habit from the nights when Maya had been a baby. She began to sing the lullaby she had made up for her daughter. "Sleep, little Maya, sleep until morning. When the yellow sunlight comes, Mom will still be here." Maya's small body went stiff in her arms. She raised her head and stared at Celeste. "That song," her voice shook. "Only one person knows that song. My mom made it up for me. She said it was ours and nobody else knew it." Maya searched Celeste's face. "Who are you? How do you know my mom's song?" Tears came before Alicia could stop them. She pulled Maya against her and kissed her forehead. "Maya, it's me. Mom is here. I came back for you." Maya lifted both hands and touched the face that looked different from the one she remembered. Her fingers moved over Alicia's nose, her cheeks, then stopped near the corner of her eye where a tear had fallen. Then Maya broke down and threw herself into her mother's arms. "Mom! I knew it. When you came here for dinner, you looked familiar. I knew you did, but nobody believed me. They told me you were dead. They said you killed Grandpa. I never believed them. During the day, I had to pretend I forgot you. But every night, I still talked to you inside my head." Mother and daughter held each other in the dark storage room, keeping their crying low because Malcolm and the others were downstairs. After a while, Alicia pulled back and wiped Maya's face. "Maya, listen to me. Listen carefully. The fact that I'm alive has to be the biggest secret between us. You cannot tell anyone. Not Dad, not Grandma, not Camille, not your teacher. No one." Maya stared at her. "If they find out, someone could hurt me. And this time, you and I might never see each other again. Can you promise me?" Maya nodded, then held out her little finger. "I promise. I'm good at keeping secrets." She looked at her mother. But you have to promise me something too. You can't die again. Alicia hooked her little finger around Maya's. I promise. I still have to come back and take you home. I'm not going anywhere. From that day on, Maya changed in a way no one in the house noticed. She still kept her head down and spoke little, but she stopped waking up crying at night. And whenever Celeste came to the estate, Maya allowed herself only one quick glance before looking away again, holding their secret close. Near the end of that month came the anniversary of Naya's death, though the name carved on the grave was Alicia's. That afternoon, Celeste left Whitmore Holdings early and drove to the cemetery outside Philadelphia carrying a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. She did not know that another car left the company parking lot soon afterward and followed from a distance. Andre had been watching her routine for 2 weeks. The date marked the anniversary of Alicia's supposed death, and he wanted to test the possibility he had spent months telling himself was impossible. Celeste knelt in front of the stone bearing Alicia's name and placed the flowers beside it. Once she was alone, everything she had held back broke through. She gripped the edge of the gravestone and cried, Nia, I came to see you. Are you cold here? I'm almost there. I'm so close. Help me finish this. Help me take back everything they stole from me, from you, from Richard. What did you just call the person buried here? The voice behind her made Celeste turn. Andre stood a few steps away, holding his own bouquet of white flowers. His face had lost its color, and his eyes were red. This grave has Alicia's name on it. Today is supposed to be Alicia's death anniversary. But you're kneeling here calling the person Nia and speaking to her like an older sister. He stepped closer. Nia, Alicia's foster sister. The woman everyone was told had moved overseas. Celeste, I'm asking you one last time. Don't lie to me. His voice began to break. The red pen. The way you circle a sentence and tap the page twice. The things you say. The strong T. The way you stop in front of Richard's memorial. I've been watching all of it for 2 months and telling myself I was losing my mind. He looked straight at her. Alicia, is it you? The wind moved through the cemetery between them. Celeste looked at the man who had once stepped in front of a flying bottle for her, who had waited outside detention in the rain, and who had stood at this same grave believing she was dead. The identity she had built around herself could not survive his face anymore. Yes, her voice broke. It's me, Andre. I'm Alicia. The flowers slipped from Andre's hand. He stood there, then took one step back. Tears ran down his face. Do you know what the last 1.5 years has been like for me? Every time I came to this grave, I blamed myself. I kept thinking that if I had gotten to you sooner, if I had checked the car, maybe you would still be alive. I almost quit Whitmore, then stayed because I wanted to find something that could clear the name of a dead woman. He looked at her. And you were alive. You watched me believe you were dead and never said anything. Andre, I'm sorry. Don't. He wiped his face. After a moment, his anger gave way to understanding. I know why you did it. Malcolm has killed people. If he knew you were alive, he would come after you. Anyone close to you could become a target too. He looked at her. That's why you kept pushing me away these past 2 months, isn't it? Alicia said nothing. Andre already had his answer. Then hear me clearly. From this moment on, you're not getting rid of me. You need someone inside Whitmore Holdings. I work in communications. I know the people, the building, and where information moves. Whatever your next step is, I'm standing beside you. That afternoon, beside the grave, carrying her own name, Alicia told Andre everything. She told him what Malcolm had done to Richard, how Nia had died in the car meant for her, why the world had been allowed to believe Alicia was dead, and why she had returned as Celeste. Neither Alicia nor Andre knew that someone else had seen them at the cemetery. A woman in her 60s had been standing farther away and watched the two of them before leaving without being noticed. People at Whitmore Holdings knew her as Lorraine, a quiet cleaner who worked several floors of the building. What most of them did not know was that Lorraine was Andre's mother. They also did not know that she was far from poor. She owned several properties and had built substantial wealth over the years, but lived without displaying it. Andre was her only child. For the past 2 months, Lorraine had watched him come home distracted and had noticed the way he looked at the woman working on the executive floor. 3 days after the cemetery visit, Alicia found a folded note on her desk. 7 o'clock tonight. Cafe in Old City. It concerns Andre, the woman who cleans the executive floor. Lorraine was waiting when Alicia arrived. She poured tea and went straight to the point. I'm Andre's mother. I saw the two of you at the cemetery. I was too far away to hear what you said, so you don't need to worry about that. But I saw my son crying in front of you, and I saw the way he looked at you. That was enough. Lorraine placed a bank card and financial documents on the table. I'm not the poor cleaner people think I am. I have enough money to make sure my son never has to depend on anyone. And I only have one son. She looked at Alicia. I don't need to know who you really are. I know enough. You had a husband before. You have a child. And whatever is happening around you involves people getting hurt and people dying. Lorraine pushed the documents toward her. Andre will follow you into that danger if you let him. I'm his mother. I cannot allow that. Take the money if you need it. I'm asking you to leave him out of whatever this is and stay away from him. Alicia looked at the documents, then pushed them back. She lifted her cup and lowered her head toward Lorraine. Please keep your money. If I took it, I would be insulting what Andre feels. She paused. But I'll do what you asked. Not because you bought me or forced me. Because you're right. Staying beside me right now means standing at the edge of something dangerous. I've already lost too many people. I won't risk losing Andre too. Alicia looked at Lorraine. I only ask one thing. Don't tell him about this meeting. If he finds out, he'll be angry with you, and you only have him. Lorraine studied her for a long time, then took back the documents. You understand more than I expected. Thank you. That night, Alicia wrote Andre a short letter. The next morning, he found it on his desk. The plan has changed. From now on, stay out of this. All contact between us ends here. Don't look for me. Don't ask why. Pretend I never came back. Andre ran to the executive floor. Celeste's office was locked, and her phone no longer connected. Alicia had pushed him out of her life because she believed it was the only way to keep him alive. The sudden distance between Celeste and Andre did not escape Malcolm's notice. He had disliked Andre ever since the shareholders' meeting years earlier, when a low-level employee had stepped in front of Alicia to protect her. Over the past 2 months, seeing Andre around the executive floor had only made Malcolm more suspicious. He had already been looking for an excuse to get rid of him when an assistant mentioned that Celeste had stopped dealing with Andre directly. Communications work was being pushed to his subordinates, and whenever Andre tried to see her, he was turned away. Malcolm laughed when he heard it. The man he considered a rival had removed himself. As far as Malcolm was concerned, the road to Celeste was finally clear. Only one thing remained in the way: his marriage to Camille. That evening, Malcolm met with Evelyn in her room. The door was partly closed as mother and son spoke inside. Divorce her soon, Evelyn said. Celeste is prettier, and she has more money than Camille ever did. Camille lost almost everything. What are you keeping her for? I've already thought about it. I'll have the lawyer prepare the papers. As for the marital assets, she owes me money, and the paperwork is already there. I can make sure she leaves with almost nothing. Malcolm continued. Once I marry Celeste, the money from Morgancrest becomes family money. We solve the debt problem at the same time. Then keep your mouth shut until everything is ready. If Camille finds out too soon, she'll lose control and ruin it. Neither of them knew that Camille had stopped in the dark hallway outside the half-closed door with a bottle of water in her hand. She heard every word. Lost her value. A burden. Send her away with nothing. Marry Celeste. The bottle slipped from her fingers and rolled across the carpet without making enough noise for them to hear. Camille stepped back against the wall. For one moment, the past seemed to replay itself. Years earlier, Malcolm and Evelyn had sat behind closed doors planning how to destroy Alicia, take her child, and strip away what belonged to her. Back then, Camille had been on their side. Now she was the woman outside the door. She returned to her bedroom and stopped in front of the framed wedding photograph on the wall. In it, she was smiling in a jeweled wedding dress while Malcolm held her around the waist. So now it's my turn. Camille laughed, but tears ran down her face. She grabbed a decorative ceramic stool and smashed it into the framed photograph. The glass shattered, cutting across Malcolm's face in the picture. Camille stared down at it. You want to marry her that badly? Fine. I'll give you a wedding on top of ashes. 3 days later, Camille sent Celeste a message that made it impossible to ignore. I want to meet you alone. It concerns Alicia. I think you'll want to hear it. Celeste stared at the message. It could be a trap, but Camille had used her old name, and Alicia needed to know how much she had discovered. She agreed to meet at a busy garden cafe during the day and sent the location to Victor before leaving. Camille was already there when she arrived. She looked thinner, with dark circles beneath her eyes, but her voice was controlled. She poured tea for both of them. Celeste, I want to ask you something. That day in the Whitmore lobby, you repeated something about a man getting tired of what he has at home and going outside for something different. I only said that once in my life, in a hotel room, to one woman. And that woman is dead. So who told you? Celeste took a sip of tea. Alicia did. Camille stared at her. Before she died, Alicia came to my fund looking for money and help clearing her name. She told me a lot of things, including what happened in room 1206. I repeated it that day because I wanted to see your reaction. Is there anything else? The answer was smooth enough that Camille had nothing to challenge. She changed the subject and began complaining about Malcolm, her marriage, and the money she had lost. Halfway through, she knocked over a container of sugar. As the table was being cleared, Camille's hand passed over Celeste's cup. 10 minutes later, Celeste felt her head growing heavy. The cafe shifted around her. She tried to stand and reach for her phone, but her legs gave way. Through the haze, she heard Camille calling for help. She must have fainted. Please give us some space. I'm family. I'll take her to the hospital. My car is right outside. Celeste woke to the smell of gasoline. She opened her eyes inside an abandoned warehouse. Her wrists were tied behind the chair, and her ankles were secured to its legs. A few feet away, Camille was pouring gasoline in a circle around her. You're awake. Good. It would be a shame to die without knowing why. Camille, killing me won't bring your money back. Malcolm isn't coming back to you either. Camille put down the empty container and crouched in front of her. Everything started falling apart when you appeared. I lost my money. Malcolm changed. Evelyn turned against me. And now they're planning to throw me out and bring you into that house. She stood. I have nowhere left to go. But if you disappear, Malcolm has no one to marry. Evelyn has no one to flatter. And I still have a chance to stay. Camille took out a lighter and stepped toward the door. One more thing. That story about Alicia at the cafe? I made it up. But looking at you now, your eyes really do remind me of hers. Camille ignited the gasoline and moved toward the exit. Smoke and heat began spreading through the warehouse. Celeste pulled against the ropes, but they held. As the heat grew, one image came back to her. Maya's little finger hooked around hers in the dark storage room. Mom, you can't die again. Maya. A metal door on the side of the warehouse crashed open. Someone ran through the smoke, calling her name. Alicia! Alicia! Where are you? Andre. Here. Her voice was weak, but he heard it. Andre reached her, cut through the ropes, lifted her from the chair, and carried her toward the exit. Behind them, part of the warehouse structure began to give way. Outside, he lowered Alicia onto the grass. When she coughed and opened her eyes, Andre sat down beside her, breathing hard. His hands were burned from the heat. Alicia looked at him. How did you know? You thought a 3-line letter was enough to make me disappear? Andre answered. Since I got that letter, I've been following you whenever I could. I saw Camille take you away from the cafe when she brought you here. I knew something was wrong. I called Victor, too. His people are on the way. Alicia lay on the grass, looking at the man beside her, unable to answer. Victor arrived about 10 minutes later with a doctor. The moment he understood what Camille had done, he wanted to call the police. Alicia stopped him. Not yet. Victor looked at her. She drugged you, tied you to a chair, poured gasoline around you, and set the place on fire. What are you waiting for? If we hand her over now, Camille is the only one who falls, but she is still Malcolm's legal wife. She still has shares connected to Sterling, and right now she hates him almost as much as she hates me. Alicia looked at Victor. The fire gives us leverage. I want her to tear apart what is left of that family with her own hands before we finish this. Victor watched her, then nodded. All right, we do it your way. In the days after the fire, Camille lived in fear. No news outlet mentioned the warehouse. Celeste went back to work as if nothing had happened. Camille could not understand how she had survived or who might know what she had done. Then a message arrived from an unknown number with 3 photographs attached. One showed Camille carrying the gasoline into the warehouse. Another showed her starting the fire. The third showed her face near the entrance. The message read, "There was a security camera at the warehouse. I have the footage. If you want to know what happens next, come alone tomorrow night." Camille spent the next day in panic. If the footage reached the police, she knew she could be facing an attempted murder charge. The following evening, she went to the meeting place alone. The man waiting for her wore a cap and mask. It was André. He placed the photographs on the table in front of her. "You drugged a woman in a cafe, tied her to a chair, poured gasoline around her, set the place on fire, and left her there. Tell me why." Camille stared at the photographs. "I know what I did. I was desperate. My husband is trying to throw me out. I lost everything. I thought if Celeste disappeared, Malcolm would have no one left to replace me with." Her voice broke. "Please, if this goes to the police, my life is over." On the other side of the wall, Malcolm sat without moving. An anonymous call had brought him there earlier, telling him he would hear something about his wife. He had expected proof that Camille was seeing another man. Instead, he heard her admit to drugging Celeste, taking her to the warehouse, and setting the fire. Malcolm left before the meeting ended. In the car, he smiled to himself. He no longer needed to search for a reason to divorce Camille. She had handed him one. Better than that, he could use what she had done to pressure her into giving up the remaining shares connected to Sterling. In Malcolm's mind, the problem had solved itself. Around that same time, Camille received another piece of news. She was 6 weeks pregnant. She sat in the clinic holding the ultrasound report and cried, this time from relief. In her mind, the baby was the last thing that could save her. If the child was Malcolm's son, Evelyn would have to accept her again. Malcolm would not dare throw her out. That evening, Camille waited until the family was at dinner, then placed the ultrasound report on the table. "Malcolm, Evelyn, I have good news. I'm 6 weeks pregnant." Evelyn stopped eating. For 1 second, something lit in her eyes, then disappeared. Camille knew what Evelyn was thinking. If the baby turned out to be a boy, it would be the grandson she had always wanted. Evelyn looked at Malcolm. Malcolm picked up the ultrasound report and studied it. Then the corner of his mouth lifted in a way that made Camille uneasy. "Pregnant? Good. Take care of yourself." Camille thought the baby had changed everything. She did not know that later that night, Malcolm sat in his office with his lawyer discussing her. "The pregnancy may actually make this easier," Malcolm said. "She lost almost all her money. She's been unstable for months. She has been breaking things, screaming, and now she tried to set someone on fire." He leaned back. "I want evaluations, records, whatever we can legally use to show that she is a danger to herself or others. If there is enough to put her into treatment or restrict her control over the shares, I want it done. I can manage the assets while she is unable to." The lawyer looked at him. Malcolm continued. "The baby stays with me after it's born. Camille can stay in treatment as long as necessary." The office door was closed, but Camille was standing in the hallway outside. She heard everything. This time, she did not scream. She did not smash anything. She slid down the wall until she was sitting on the carpet, both hands covering her stomach. One thought became clearer than anything else in her mind. She had given Malcolm her youth, her money, and her conscience. She had betrayed the people who raised her and helped destroy another woman's life because she believed she loved him. Now she finally understood what he was. A monster wearing a man's face, moving from one woman to the next. Alicia had been on the table before her. Now it was Camille's turn. While Malcolm and Camille watched each other like enemies, waiting for the other to make a move, the search for the final piece of evidence entered its last stage. The first clue came from Ruth, the former Whitmore housekeeper who had been dismissed years earlier. André tracked her down in Lancaster County and spent an afternoon talking with her before asking about Richard's belongings. Ruth thought for a moment. "I remember when Richard died. The hospital sent back a cloth bag with his watch, his reading glasses, and that hearing device he always wore. Evelyn took the bag home. I saw it around his room afterward. Then when Camille moved in and started changing the house, all the old things were moved into the third-floor storage room. Richard's belongings were probably taken up there too. The third-floor storage room. When Andre told Alicia, she knew exactly which room Ruth meant. It was the same room where Camille had locked Maya. The same room where Alicia had held her daughter and sung the lullaby that revealed who she really was. The hearing device might have been sitting inside that house for 2 years while no one paid attention to it. Malcolm, however, had started searching too. He had never completely forgotten about Richard's hearing device. After Alicia's supposed death, the fear had faded. But when Calvin reported that someone had gone to Lancaster County asking questions about Ruth, that fear returned. Malcolm questioned Evelyn about Richard's belongings, but she could not remember where she had put them. He searched her room, then went up to the third-floor storage room himself. After digging through boxes of old belongings, he finally found the cloth bag. He emptied it onto the floor. Richard's watch fell out. So did his reading glasses. The hearing device was gone. Malcolm stared at the empty bag. Someone had taken it. He did not know when or who. He sent Calvin to find Ruth and learn what she knew. Alicia had already anticipated that move. Victor had arranged for Ruth to stay somewhere else for a while people in her old neighborhood were left with a simple story. Ruth had once found some old belongings from her former employer and sold them with other unwanted items. Calvin reported the story back to Malcolm, and Malcolm's people began following the wrong trail. Alicia then found a chance to meet Maya on the way home from school. Mother and daughter sat together inside a car with dark windows. Alicia asked about the old things in the third-floor storage room. Maya leaned closer to her. "Mom, I know about Grandpa's things. When Camille used to lock me in that storage room, I would look through the old boxes because I was bored. I found a cloth bag with Grandpa's watch and glasses. His hearing device was in there too." Alicia's attention sharpened. Maya continued, "I remembered how Grandpa used to let me tap it twice and then he'd say, 'Hello, hello, I can hear you.' I was afraid Camille would throw it away like she threw away my drawing, so I took it." "Where did you put it?" "Inside my teddy bear, the old one Grandpa gave me. There's a tear under one arm. Grandpa used to hide candy and little notes in there when we played treasure hunt. He called it our secret safe. Nobody else knew." Alicia pulled Maya into her arms and kissed her hair. Even after Richard was gone, something he had shared with his granddaughter had left Alicia a path back to the truth. "Is the teddy bear still in the storage room?" "Yes. I didn't bring it to my bedroom because I was afraid Camille would take it. Dad and Camille are going to a wedding in Baltimore this weekend. Grandma will be out too. You can come. I'll take you upstairs." That Saturday afternoon, Celeste arrived at the Whitmore estate under the excuse of dropping off documents for Malcolm. 10 minutes later, Alicia and Maya were kneeling beside the old teddy bear in the third-floor storage room. Alicia found the tear beneath its arm and reached inside. Her fingers closed around a small object wrapped in an old child's handkerchief. She unfolded it. Richard's hearing device rested in her palm, the same one whose batteries she had replaced so many times. That night, at Victor's penthouse, a technical specialist spent 3 hours working with Richard's hearing device. The storage inside it was still readable, but 2 years in the teddy bear had damaged much of the data. Near morning, the specialist finally looked up. "I recovered part of one recording. It was created at 11:11 p.m. on the night Richard died. The file is damaged, so only fragments survived." Everyone in the room went silent as he played it. The sound of a hospital heart monitor came first. Then a door opened. A man's voice followed, broken by static. "You're meeting the lawyer tomorrow. Do you hate me that much?" A section of the recording disappeared into noise. Then came Richard's strained sounds, hurried breathing, movement near the bed, and a hard impact. After another burst of distortion, the same male voice returned for only a few words. "You forced me." Alicia sat without moving. Tears ran down her face as she listened to the final sounds from Richard's last night alive. Victor rested a hand on her shoulder, then looked at the specialist. "Can the voice be identified?" "Someone who knew him might recognize it. But for a legal voice comparison, I wouldn't rely on this alone. The file is too damaged, and the surviving sentences are too fragmented. A good defense attorney could argue they refer to something else." Victor nodded. "So we have the skeleton, but not enough to finish him with it." He looked at Alicia. "We need either more physical evidence or Malcolm saying what happened himself." Alicia wiped her face and looked at the hearing device on the table. "Then we make him say it." Alicia looked up. The tears on her face had dried. Then we record him somewhere he believes is completely safe, beside the woman he thinks he is about to marry. She turned to Victor. Give me a marriage agreement he cannot resist, and a recording device his people will not find. 1 week later, Celeste invited Malcolm to dinner. During the meal, she placed a folder on the table. Malcolm, I've thought about us. I'm over 30. I've met plenty of men, but not many who understand business the way you do. I'll marry you after you finish dealing with your current marriage. Malcolm stared at her. Celeste continued. But I work in finance. Feelings are feelings, and money is money. This is a prenuptial and investment agreement. Before the wedding, you transfer 49% of Whitmore Holdings to me as security. In return, Morgan Crest will restructure the $15 million debt and commit another $25 million to stabilize the company. She pushed the folder toward him. Take it home. Have your lawyers read every line. If you agree, we'll meet privately next week, sign everything, and talk about our future. Malcolm took the documents home and reviewed them for 3 nights. His lawyer checked every clause and found nothing that made him pull away. To Malcolm, giving up 49% in exchange for wiping out the debt, receiving new capital, and marrying the woman behind Morgan Crest still looked like a winning deal. The private meeting was set for Friday night at a secluded property in South Jersey, just outside Philadelphia. Malcolm chose the location because he wanted no witnesses. His security team arrived earlier and swept the rooms for listening devices several times. They found nothing. By the time they left, Malcolm believed the place was clean. What he did not know was that the recording device was not hidden in the room. Alicia carried it with her. That night, the signed agreement lay on the table beside a bottle of wine. Malcolm had been drinking, pleased with the deal and with the woman he believed would soon become his wife. Alicia poured more wine and began the last part of the plan. Malcolm, if we're really going to get married, I need to ask you something. And I need the truth. Malcolm looked at her. I've heard some disturbing things. Your father died after collapsing in his hospital room when you were visiting him. Your first wife died in a car after the brakes failed. And now your second wife may be removed from your life too. I'm about to become the third woman beside you. Should I be worried? Malcolm frowned. Why are you listening to gossip? Gossip? Alicia turned the stem of her glass. Then maybe you should hear something better than gossip. She placed her phone on the table and played the recovered recording. The hospital monitor sounded through the room. Then came the damaged male voice. You're meeting the lawyer tomorrow. Do you hate me that much? Static followed. Then Richard's strained sounds, the impact, and the final broken words. You forced me. Malcolm's wineglass stopped in his hand. The color drained from his face. He stood and grabbed the phone. Where did you get this? Richard's hearing device. Alicia stayed seated. He had it with him the night he died. Malcolm stared at her. Give me the original. The original is somewhere safe. Alicia poured more wine. Sit down. Taking my phone won't change anything. Malcolm remained standing. Alicia looked at him. I deal with money, Malcolm. I'm not interested in judging you. I'm interested in risk. If I marry you and put millions more into Whitmore Holdings, I need to know exactly what I'm marrying into. Tell me everything tonight, and I can decide how to protect us. I have enough money and enough people to deal with problems before they reach us. She paused. But if you lie to me, I tear up the agreement, withdraw the funding, and decide what to do with that recording. Malcolm stood there looking at her. Fear, alcohol, greed, and the belief that Celeste was about to become his wife worked against one another inside him. Then he dropped back into his chair, emptied his glass, and set it down. Fine. You want the truth? I'll give it to you. But once you hear it, you're in this with me. Alicia said nothing. Malcolm leaned forward. Yes. My father died because of me. He was meeting his lawyer the next morning. He was going to transfer control to Alicia and leave his own son with nothing. I put the drug into his IV. He collapsed and fell from the bed. Alicia's hands tightened in her lap. Malcolm continued. The bribery case against Alicia was mine too. Calvin arranged the transfers. My people planted the vial in her car. Evelyn gave the statement I told her to give. He laughed once. And when Alicia wouldn't disappear in prison, I decided she could disappear somewhere else. My people sabotaged the brakes on her car. She died on that mountain road because I wanted her gone. Alicia kept her face still. Malcolm looked at her. You wanted to know what kind of man you're marrying? Now you know. Anything that gets in my way, I remove. even my own father." The recorder on Alicia captured every word. She let Malcolm finish before lifting her wine glass. "Now I understand. Thank you for being honest with me." She touched her glass against his empty one. "Have another drink. To our wedding." After 11 that night, Victor's car picked Alicia up at the end of the private road leading from the South Jersey property. She got into the back seat and handed him the recording device. Her body was still shaking from what she had heard. Victor looked at it. "Did we get enough?" Alicia leaned back and closed her eyes. "Every crime," in his own words. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. "He wants a wedding big enough for everyone to see. Then we'll give him one. Shareholders, reporters, business partners, everyone. And on that day, one more guest will arrive." Victor looked at her. Alicia finished. "The dead woman he buried." The stage Malcolm built for what he believed would be his greatest victory turned out to be larger than anyone expected. He booked the grand ballroom of a major convention hotel in Center City, invited 300 guests, including shareholders, business partners, industry leaders, and reporters from nearly 20 news outlets. The official purpose of the event was an extraordinary shareholders meeting announcing a strategic partnership between Whitmore Holdings and Morgan Crest Capital. But Malcolm had saved the real centerpiece for later. After announcing the new investment, he planned to bring Celeste onto the stage and reveal their engagement in front of the entire business community. He wanted every person who had ever called him a puppet chairman living on his wife's money to watch him marry the woman behind one of the most powerful investment funds in the room. 1 week before the event, Victor and 2 attorneys had already delivered a thick file to investigators. It contained the recovered recording from Richard's hearing device, the clean confession recording from Malcolm's private meeting with Celeste, surveillance images of the man under Alicia's car, records tied to the bribery frame-up, and Alicia's formal statement. The investigation moved forward without public notice. On the morning of the event, the ballroom was filled with lights, flowers, cameras, and guests. Malcolm wore a black suit and red tie and greeted people at the entrance with a smile. Evelyn stayed close to Celeste, introducing her to everyone she knew. "This is my future daughter-in-law. Celeste is smart, successful, and such a good woman. I liked her from the first time we met." Celeste only smiled. That day, she wore white from head to toe. Her makeup was lighter than usual, and a few people thought there was something familiar about her, though no one could say why. Near the back of the ballroom, another woman arrived and took a seat close to the exit. Camille had lost weight, and the dark circles beneath her eyes made her look older. A week earlier, she had received Malcolm's divorce papers along with threats about the evidence against her. She had planned not to come. Then an invitation arrived with a handwritten line. "You should be here to see how the story ends for the women who enter the Whitmore family." That sentence brought her to the ballroom. The ceremony began with reports, applause, signatures, and photographs. Then Malcolm took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, besides the strategic investment we announced today, I have another piece of news to share. It is personal, but it is also connected to the future of Whitmore Holdings." He smiled toward Celeste. "Celeste and I have decided to build a life together." The room erupted in applause and camera flashes. Malcolm extended his hand toward her. "Please join me on stage." Celeste stood, adjusted her white jacket, and walked up the steps. She passed Malcolm's outstretched hand without taking it and went directly to the podium. She placed a thin leather folder beside the microphone. "Before we talk about a wedding, I would like to tell you a story about a woman who once stood on a Whitmore Holdings stage like this." The room settled. She grew up in foster care. Richard helped her when she was young. She later married into the Whitmore family and spent 10 years helping run this company, caring for Richard after his stroke and raising her daughter. Celeste continued. In return, she was humiliated inside her own home, betrayed by her husband, framed for taking bribes, and later accused of killing Richard. While pregnant, she lost her unborn son. She was forced to sign divorce papers and transfer her shares in exchange for protecting her daughter. After serving time for a crime she did not commit, she came out and found that her daughter barely recognized her. Not long after that, she was believed to have died in a car crash after the brakes failed. The ballroom had gone silent. Malcolm's expression began to change. He stepped toward her. "Celeste, this is supposed to be a happy day. Why are you bringing this up?" Celeste moved away from him and looked across the room. That woman's name was Alicia. Malcolm stopped. Celeste lifted the microphone. And Alicia never died. She looked directly at him. I am Alicia. For 1 second, no one moved. Then the ballroom exploded with voices, chairs shifting, reporters standing, and cameras flashing. Malcolm remained on stage, staring at the woman in white as the color drained from his face. No. Malcolm grabbed a second microphone. Don't listen to her. My former wife died 2 years ago. There's a death certificate. There's a grave. I stood at her funeral myself. This woman is a fraud trying to steal from my family. Security, get her off the stage. 2 security employees started forward, then stopped when 4 investigators positioned around the ballroom stood and moved toward the stage. Alicia opened the folder on the podium. Malcolm is right about one thing. There is a death certificate, and there is a grave, so let's start there. The large screen behind the stage changed. The first images showed the night before the crash. A man could be seen beneath Alicia's car. The woman buried under my name was Nia, my sister. On the morning of the crash, she borrowed my car to get to the airport. Because of the fire damage, the initial identification relied on my car, my identification, and the belongings found at the scene. I allowed that mistake to stand because someone had just tried to kill me, and I needed him to believe he had succeeded. I have already disclosed everything I did during that period to investigators, and I will answer for my part in it. Alicia looked toward Malcolm. That car was supposed to be mine that afternoon. Another image appeared. This man worked for Calvin, Malcolm's assistant. He was photographed under my car before the brakes failed. Malcolm shook his head. Fake. Those pictures are fake. Alicia moved to the next set of records. The bribery case against me was also manufactured. The anonymous complaint was traced back to a private company connected to Calvin and Malcolm. The authorizations used to move money into my account carried forged signatures. Calvin has already been questioned and is cooperating with investigators. Voices spread through the ballroom. Malcolm began backing toward the side of the stage. Alicia reached into the folder and lifted Richard's hearing device. And this is Richard's hearing device. Many of you who knew him will remember it. He kept it with him until the night he died. It had a recording function, and part of what happened that night survived. She played the damaged recording. The hospital monitor sounded through the ballroom, followed by Malcolm's broken voice, Richard struggling, and the words, "You forced me." When it ended, Alicia looked at the audience. The recording is damaged, so I won't ask anyone here to guess whose voice that was. She paused. Instead, I'll play another recording made 10 days ago. This time Malcolm's voice came through the speakers without static. Yes, my father died because of me. He was meeting his lawyer the next morning. He was going to transfer control to Alicia and leave his own son with nothing. It put the drug into his eye. He collapsed and fell from the bed. The ballroom went still. The recording continued. The bribery case against Alicia was mine too. Calvin arranged the transfers. My people planted the vial in her car. Evelyn gave the statement I told her to give. And when Alicia wouldn't disappear in prison, I decided she could disappear somewhere else. My people sabotaged the brakes on her car. Then came Malcolm's final words. Anything that gets in my way, I remove. Even my own father. When the recording stopped, silence held for several seconds before the room erupted. Reporters moved toward the stage. Shareholders shouted. Malcolm looked around and turned toward the exit behind the curtains. He made it only a few steps before investigators stopped him. His hands were pulled behind his back and handcuffed. One investigator identified himself and informed Malcolm that he was under arrest in connection with Richard's death, the framing of Alicia, and other offenses under investigation. Malcolm struggled as they brought him past the podium. Alicia, you tricked me. You lied to me, made me sign those papers, made me talk. You set me up. Alicia looked directly at him. Her answer went through the microphone. I didn't trap you. I sat there and let you tell the truth. Malcolm stared at her. Alicia continued. Everything they heard came from you, about things you chose to do. The only person who buried you today, Malcolm, was you. As Malcolm was taken away, another scene unfolded near the front row. Evelyn rushed toward the stage and dropped to her knees in front of Alicia. Alicia, please. I didn't know everything he was doing. Malcolm made me give that statement. He told me what to say. I'm old. I was confused. I only did what my son told me. She clasped her hands. Please forgive me. He's my only son. If he goes to prison, Who do I have left? Alicia walked down from the stage and stopped in front of her. Stand up. And don't call me your daughter. Evelyn looked up. Alicia continued. I spent 10 years in your family, and not once did you treat me like one. I remember the insults. I remember the way you used my childhood against me. I remember the bottle you threw at me while I was pregnant. And I remember you standing at Richard's funeral and giving false testimony against me. Alicia looked at her. Richard was your husband. He spent his life building that family, and he died because of your son. I'm not going to hit you. I'm not going to stand here and insult you. What happens to you now is for the law to decide. She stepped aside. You still have that large house, but when you go back to it, look around and see whether there is anyone left who truly wants to stand beside you. Evelyn sank back onto the carpet as Alicia walked away. Near the back of the ballroom, 2 investigators approached Camille. She did not resist. She stood and walked toward them. As she passed Alicia, she stopped. The 2 women looked at each other. Camille's voice was hoarse. Alicia, you did it. I lost. Malcolm is being taken away. Evelyn is on her knees. Everyone who hurt you is falling apart. Are you happy now? Alicia looked at the woman who had once laughed at her, taken her place inside the Whitmore home, mistreated Maya, and later tried to burn her alive. Then her eyes dropped to Camille's stomach. No, I'm not happy. Camille said nothing. People are happy when they get back what they wanted. No one can give me Richard back. No one can give me Naya back. No one can return the son I lost before he was born or the years Maya spent growing up without me. Alicia shook her head. I didn't do all of this so I could beat you, Camille. I wanted the people who died to have the truth. And I wanted the child who is still alive to grow up without carrying our shame. She looked at Camille's stomach again. You still have a child coming. Whatever happens next, live like someone that child won't have to be ashamed of one day. Tears filled Camille's eyes. She nodded once, then turned and walked away between the investigators. In the months that followed, the cases surrounding the Whitmore family were reopened one after another. Calvin cooperated with investigators and gave a full account of what he had done for Malcolm. The conviction on Alicia's record was vacated, and the earlier allegations against her were formally cleared. The authorities issued a public acknowledgement that she had been wrongfully accused. The agreement transferring Alicia's shares to Malcolm was also voided after the court found that she had signed it under coercion. Whitmore Holdings called another emergency board meeting. This time, every voting member present supported Alicia's return as chairwoman. Malcolm's trial drew national attention. The recordings, financial records, forensic evidence, and testimony from the people who had helped him left little room for denial. He was convicted of Richard's murder, charges arising from Nia's death in the sabotaged car, the scheme to frame Alicia, the attempt on Alicia's life, and related offenses. The court sentenced him to spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Evelyn was convicted for her false testimony and her role in concealing what Malcolm had done. Because of her age and declining health, the court imposed strict supervision and home confinement rather than requiring her to serve the full custodial term immediately. She returned to the Whitmore estate, where part of the property was tied up in legal claims and debts. Most days, she lived there alone. Camille also faced criminal charges for the warehouse fire and for what had happened to Maya inside the Whitmore home. Her case moved forward while she was pregnant, with the court setting conditions for her surrender and sentence after childbirth. While awaiting the next stage of the case, Camille wrote Alicia a long letter. She asked for only one thing. When her child grew older, if Alicia ever had any say in it, she hoped the child would not have to grow up carrying the full weight of everything its mother had once done. One day, Malcolm sat behind the glass in the prison visiting room with his head shaved and his face thinner than before. When Alicia walked in, he moved closer to the glass and gripped the edge of the table. The man who had once controlled rooms full of people began to cry. Alicia, you came. I knew you would come. Please help me. You have influence now. Ask them to reduce my sentence. Give me a chance at parole someday. 25 years, 30 years, anything but dying in here. He looked at her through the glass. I know I was wrong. I know what I did was unforgivable. But we were husband and wife for 10 years. Think about that. I did love you once. When we first married, I really did. His voice broke. I dream about you and Maya in here. Do you still care about me at all? Alicia sat across from him and listened until he had nothing left to say. Her expression did not change. Then she opened her bag and took out a white handkerchief that had yellowed with age. A blue meters was stitched into one corner. She placed it on the table beside the glass. Do you recognize this? Malcolm stared at it. Alicia continued. 22 years ago, there was a foster girl standing on a stage receiving a scholarship. Everyone below was applauding, but she didn't have one person there who belonged to her. She started crying. Alicia looked at the handkerchief. A boy came onto the stage, handed her this, and told her, "Girls look terrible when they cry. Wipe your face." Malcolm stopped moving. That girl kept this handkerchief for 22 years. She agreed to marry that boy partly because of it. She stayed in that marriage for 10 years because she kept believing the boy who gave it to her was still somewhere inside the man she had married. Alicia looked back at Malcolm. You asked whether I still love you. Here is my answer. She pushed the handkerchief closer to the glass. The person I loved was the boy who gave me this handkerchief. That boy died a long time ago, Malcolm. Long before Richard died. Long before Nia. Long before my son. Her voice remained steady. I came here today to return this to the person I once loved. As for the man sitting in front of me now, I don't know him. Alicia stood and walked toward the door without looking back. Behind her, Malcolm shouted her name and struck his hands against the glass. The visiting room door closed. The old handkerchief remained on the table on his side of the barrier, close enough to see but beyond his reach, like everything he had once held in his hands and thrown away himself. The following spring brought several pieces of good news. The first was that the court granted Alicia custody of Maya. On the day Maya moved into their new home, Alicia had already prepared a room filled with drawing supplies for her. In the living room, she hung a restored picture made from the 4 torn pieces someone had once picked out of the trash. A red-roofed house, a yellow sun, 3 people holding hands. When Maya came home from school, she stood looking at the drawing for a long time before turning to her mother. Mom, can I draw a new one someday? This one is missing people. I need to add Nia up in the clouds, and my baby brother up there too. And Andre, he saved you twice. Twice a week, Alicia took Maya to see a therapist. Maya was sleeping through the night now, and what sometimes brought tears to Alicia's eyes was hearing her daughter argue back over little things like any other child who knew she was loved and safe. Another piece of good news came during dinner at Lorraine's house. Andre brought Alicia home to meet his mother, expecting the quiet woman he knew to be happy about the woman he loved. Instead, before anyone started eating, Lorraine set down her fork and looked directly at Alicia. Before we eat, there's something I need to admit in front of Andre. I was the one who asked you to meet me at that cafe. I was the one who put money on the table and asked you to leave him. That letter you wrote to end things with him came because of me. Andre set down his bowl and stared at his mother. Mom, you did what? Lorraine raised a hand, then turned back to Alicia. I've lived more than 60 years believing I was a good judge of people. That time, I was wrong. I looked at you and saw a woman who had already been married, who had a child, and who was surrounded by danger and unfinished pain. I thought that made you wrong for my son. Lorraine looked down for a moment. Now I understand that a woman can survive that much suffering and still keep her heart intact. You refused my money because you would not insult what Andre felt for you. I had no right to look down on you. Lorraine lowered her head. Please forgive an old woman who almost pushed away something good for her own family. From now on, you and Maya can consider this your home too. Alicia reached across the table and took her hand, her eyes wet. Andre sat between anger at his mother and relief that she had finally accepted Alicia, and in the end he chose to say nothing and kept eating. The third piece of good news appeared in the newspapers soon afterward. Alicia used part of her personal assets to establish the Richard Nia Foundation, providing legal assistance and temporary safe housing for women and children affected by domestic abuse. At the foundation's launch, Alicia gave only a short statement. Richard spent his life reaching out to people who were struggling. Nia died while trying to find justice for someone who had been wronged. This foundation is a way for their hands and their path to continue. One afternoon near the end of March, sunlight returned after days of damp weather. In the kitchen of Alicia's new home, a space much smaller than the kitchen at the Whitmore estate, 3 people were making dinner together. Alicia stood at the stove cooking meat while the smell of onions filled the room. Andre rolled up his sleeves and washed vegetables, getting teased by Alicia whenever he left something dirty. Maya moved around the kitchen, setting bowls and utensils on the table while talking nonstop about school. When dinner was ready, the three of them sat around a small wooden table. Maya picked up the best piece of meat and placed it in Alicia's bowl. "The best piece is for Mom. My teacher says that's what you're supposed to do. Eat more, Mom. You're still too skinny." "Then you eat too," Alicia said. Maya looked at Andre. "Andre too. You washed the vegetables better today than yesterday." Andre laughed. "You two are always making fun of me." "Maya, eat. You still have homework. Tomorrow I'll take you and your mom out for ice cream. Deal?" "Deal. Pinky promise?" "Pinky promise." Maya was still chewing when she stopped and looked at Alicia. "Mom? What is it? Tomorrow? And the day after tomorrow? And next week? And next month too? You're still going to pick me up after school, right? You're not going anywhere again, are you?" Alicia set down her fork. She looked at her daughter's wide, dark eyes. The eyes of a child who had spent years separated from her mother and had once been forced to pretend she no longer remembered her in order to keep their secret. Alicia reached across the table, brushed a strand of hair away from Maya's forehead, and hooked her little finger around the small finger already waiting for hers. "Yes, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, next week, next month, next year too. I'll pick you up every day." She smiled at her daughter. "Now eat. Your soup is getting cold." Malcolm harmed the father who had raised him, cared for him, and taught him how to live. He destroyed the wife who had shared 10 years of marriage with him, caused the deaths of innocent people, and turned every woman who entered his life into another step toward money and power. Money itself is not evil. But when people commit evil for money, they reveal just how frightening its power can become in the wrong hands. The darkness inside a person who is willing to trample every moral boundary for wealth will eventually face consequences. But justice does not simply arrive on its own. It takes courageous and honest people who are willing to face hardship, confront wrongdoing, and bring the truth into the light. That ending was satisfying, wasn't it? Share your thoughts and feelings with Olivia's story in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye, and I'll see you again in the next story.